Herbs to her chest, Emily confesses Siona. She loved him with all her heart, and his cheeks flashing with fire. In the middle of the flower sea in the full moon, her gaze asked the guy silently, is he ready to be near without hesitation? He wanted to say something, but Emily was approaching. His fingers were eager and the words were stuck in her throat. No one flies out of her mouth. Suddenly his hands lie down on her shoulders. He sighs and confesses. He sees an important girlfriend in her, but that is what will not allow them to be together. Emily looks away, blushes, and quietly asks whether she likes. The secret warmth of the words of the deer wraps the girl. He convinces that she is beautiful, exactly as he is. On the face of Emily blossoms a happy smile. She bows and quietly asks, maybe you think again? A light smile appears on her lips. Let him answer after the victory over the king of demons, she asks, and disappears behind the door. And Zion stands, listening to her steps, and silently looks. The door was barely closed by Emily, and Zion, barely restraining himself, swayed, sat down hard and touched the mask, removed her carefully, trembled her lips in his soul. Confusion and shock from genuine confession. Sleeping, he remembered how Lamia confessed that she was no longer able to hide the feelings and wanted to be near. And the moon verse whispered that she fell in love with him, despite their joint journey. The memory of lyre and moon compels him to fall on a soft, moist grass. Somewhere in the heart, the inconvenience moves. 3 certificates at once, and the smile slides on the face, but he angrily drives her, almost does not hit himself on the cheek. The cheeks had a heat. He thought that 3 girls confessed to him in love, and happiness broke in his chest like a spring blizzard. 16 heroes are divided into 2 elements. Some control fire or light, while others carry gifts like the divine eye or God's speed, like a lightning. 13 years of darkness knew her hero. The bureau of the ACC, who became the embodiment of the element, grabbed his sword. The blade played in the rays. The predictable shadows were lost with the mile. Right in front of Sion and friends grow a slippery creature with tentacles and numerous eyes. When it slides closer, the air is filled with moist swirl. The tentacles twist in a troubled dance. Everyone fades. The monster's tentacles cut the air. But travelers have time to dodge. The mucus flows through his skin, touches herbs, and from under the paws eating smoke rises. Zion warns, poison inside. The moon wand she was in the air. She turned to Zion and asked her to give her a monster, said that if he had a poisonous mucus the fire should help. And the fireblords broke silence, hit the monster, and flashed the flames. The monster came out of the flames, unharmed, breathed. And Lena sends the wind winks, but they, whistling, bounce off the skin, and the moon in the sky fades with surprise. It turns out that even the wind cannot move it. Evil water spears emerge around, flash in the air, and fly rapidly into the monster, swelling and cutting the air, and it throws all its power into battle. Only by touching the monster, the spears disappear. The moon grabs the air, trembled, the eyes are confused. Why her magic is powerless, the moment will stretch, and the answer is lost in the dark. Lama goes forward, gently asks for the moon to retreat and whispers that she can handle herself. Calm in her voice, and steps are confidently leading through the intense air. With a sword and bundle, she proclaims, this poisonous slippery probably is afraid of fire, water, and even more lightning. The sword is buzzing in the air. It throws the moon. Without lightning you do not shine here. The moon is indignant with his fists. Everything burns inside. It is unfair. She just dreams of amazing Zion. Lamia focuses, flies into the air, splits the giant body in half. Metal singing is heard in the air and blood splashes burst in hot air. The body of the monster spreads on the ground with a viscous darkness, pulsates and floats. In the lamp, their eyes shine with relief, and on the lips, a gentle smile. The look turns to Saluna. Is there anything to add? The moon is just screaming and turning away, and Emily smiles and thanks to her friend for their efforts. Behind Lamia, suddenly the remains of the monster were moved and stirred. Hearing this sinister sound, she turned sharply. The moon sharply pushes the girlfriend. The monster's blow jumps past. Liamia is swept into the dust, and above the moon seems to be sinking in her shade. The heart of Lamia is shrinking, she notices. The moon curves and squeezes the shoulder. The skin is blackened there. The smell of bitter poison sharply beats in the nose. 2 shadows grew out of darkness. Now 2 monsters became. And Lamia, pressing against the moon, did not believe. The weakness of these creatures is the usual gray earth under his feet. Blunging, Amelia Zone run to Lami and the moon. The arms tremble on their shoulders, sticky blood smell and acute anxiety. Seeing the wound of the moon, Amelia throws Zio. Poison. It is necessary to save immediately. They retreat. Zion steps between the allies and the enemy, stubbornly states that he will give himself advice. Emily tries to persuade him to stop, but the earth under his feet is protection against poison. Dark magic is powerless here. The driver steps forward, extends his hand, and a small sphere of darkness appears in his palm and whispers quietly, "Knights." The whispering in the dark asks for strength, and the earth under the monster shrinks, moves, crack. Deep shadows play a predatory rhythm around. The hum is rising, 2 walls grow from the ground, and Zion, squeezing a fist, makes them a deaf roar to come together, crushing the monster between them. The walls are scattered again on powder, dust in the air, and the girls look in surprise. They whisper enthusiastically that Zion, as always, is striking and not waiting for him. Zion returns to the girls, with brilliant eyes confesses that he is just lucky, and is asked not to stop but become even stronger as one team. After the battle with the monster, all 4 sat in a cool shade of trees, hiding in the whisper of the leaves, inhaling the inhalation of herbs, and feeling the peace of the woods. Lemia sighs. Even in one team with Zion, her magic and sword seem fragile. Her strength is almost imperceptible. In battle, she has never felt really useful. Emily's eyes are dimly shined. He confesses that she was treated only once, and then a small scratch, not a real wound. The girls sigh in the group, in the air-knit sadness. Zion catches their depressed look and gently calls, reminiscent of how long they have been fighting together, shoulder to the shoulder. He tells them, the main thing is not the battles themselves, but the fact that there were always those who believed and kept with him. In the air, the dust of memories did not have time to settle down, as Zion remembered the moment when it was too late to save. One of the rescued shouted that his father had taken away the demon, although they were defending him. Zion tells the girls with a smile, "Without you, he would have left heroism." He asks not to rack his face because he does not suffer sadness next to warm women's laughter. In the corner of the room shimmer light. The moon smiles and quietly asks for forgiveness. The language is tied to her anxiety, and Lamia, swallowing excitement, promises to prove her dignity today. A bright smile shines on Emily's lips. She hugs friends and quietly inspires faith. They overcome everything, even the darkest minutes. Thank you. The Zion calls for friends to move on. In these 3 years, they have become a real family for him, and together they will overcome everything that will happen on the way. On the way back, the moon proposes to disperse, calls Zion to the ham in a neighboring village, and Zion remains alone, looking back. Lemia quietly hugs him for his elbow, whispers to apologize. She explains that something needs to be prepared, and Amelia is a light smile. It will be for a special, for his birthday. Only then Zion remembers. Today, his holiday. Memories of last year's party flash in the head, and the lips are drawn in a smile from the anticipation. Whether it will be as loud, bright, fun. Touching the moonlight, he promises the girls to do others, and the moon whispers, "Wait in the evening." Going, he asks Zion not to eat anything, and Zion begs the girls to stop. Throwing the mask, he confesses, he has something important to everyone. Zion thanks that friends did not laugh at his stupid dream to erase sadness from this world. Leaning in gratitude, he thanks them for their loyalty, and lifting their eyes, sees. Girls avoid their eyes and hide guilt in the shadow of their faces. Emily's wet cheeks noticed, the eyes tremble, and little tears are pouring quietly, as if her heart squeezes something anxious. The Zion, having lowered, apologizes because it seems that something is wrong. The girls smile again, Emily wipes tears. They say, dust got into the eye, and all 3 go through sun pollen. Looking followed, Zion sighs, as if the burden is suffocating on the chest, pulling the mask, kneading his shoulders and moving away in silence. An evening ahead, and what to do next, he still does not know. I was unexpectedly approached, smelling into the frosty air, and said quietly, "Tonight, his holiday, so cannot put all the preparations only on friends." The wind breaks the silence when the feet carry it forward. Because today, 25, it is time to stop worrying and finally collect yourself in pieces. The faces of the trees stand tightly around. The shadows are intertwined on the ground, and the heart shrinks. If it does not return, it will be late. But suddenly something shines and stops. Before Zion's vision, 3 desperation cuts with a huge orc. The swords whistle in the air, the earth from its steps is deaf, and the air seeps the smell of sweat and fear. The angry goblin growls, roaming a stick on the ground, and both boys like chips fly in different directions. 2 boys were hard on stone, and the girl Mag is trembling with fear. Zion feels, Goblin's strength is too great, cooperation with Magina is not glued, and the defeat hangs in a step. The crowd is not approached by Zion, carefully asks whether help is needed. The young man, shaking with fear, shouts that he does not recognize him, but asks for salvation. The monster is too strong. In silence, at lightning speed, the sword snots from the vagina. The jump rushes to the goblin, and cold iron with a rustle breaks the air. Silence. Goblin does not move. The earth takes Zion gently. It calmly puts the sword in the vagina. The breath is flat, and in the air, tart dust and relief. Goblin's body is roar flies in pieces in a moment, and all 3 froze. The sword turned the enemy into a bunch of debris in one movement, and around the smell of metal and dust around. Already going to leave, Zion says goodbye, but suddenly 3 friends rush to him towards him, shouting that they have not yet had time to thank. A mask, black clothes, and a singing voice are acts. Zion nods affirmatively, and then, as if passionate about the wind, he confesses, "What is honored? When your idol reaches out your hand, he is still convinced. Everything is fine." The evening strokes the city with darkness. Zion stands at the door of the hotel, called the Moon. The heart jumps. The palms are wet, although it is only his birthday. The girl met him at the hotel and spent it in a cozy room where coffee smelled. She said quietly that Emily will come with her girlfriends now, and he, sitting at the table, removes a mask, gloves, and waits. Tension does not release. Light steps, rustle dresses, soft perfume aroma. Emily, Luna, and Lamia descend to him, smiling a little guilty, asking for forgiveness for expectations, shining with the beauty of evening dresses. Siam's cheeks broke out when he saw his friends. The girls heard how he was passionate about saying that they were beautiful, and sincerely rejoiced, catching his vicious look. The Moon is quiet. The fingers slide on his cheek. Her voice is kind. Today all the views, only on it. Lamia greeted him on his birthday, gently reminding that her gift in the Moon was the vagina from the sword pad. She noted Zion that his old people had long been erased and crawled with every movement. Soft gloves were in his palms, a gift from Emily. She knit them on her own and quietly confessed that she wanted him warmer and cozier. Under the noise of laughter, Zion takes gifts, thanks friends and assures that he will keep them all, pressing their packages to the breast, like memories of those nearby. The Moon laughs. "Where did you take the gloves?" In the adventures of moaning a crime, she will tease, but Emily asks, "Do not joke like that." And here from the eyes of Zion quietly roll several tears. The palm hides tears on the face, but Zion whispers stubbornly that does not cry. The Moon asks why, and Lamia approaches, laughs and murmurs scions, so sweet that she may eat. Warm palms lay on his sword. "It is not for your birthday, give it," she asked, and Zion with his weapon thanked her for his care. Glittered peace in her eyes. Emily fits, warmly touches Zion's palms and asks quietly, "Will you remove your rings for me?" The girl presses his palm to his chest, asks to remove the hero's wedding ring on her birthday though for a moment to feel relief, without a heavy burden on her heart. Zion's cheeks flare up. He nods and extends the girl's earrings, and the Moon is quiet. Asks to remove the magical charm, and the Zion, sighing, puts them in the palm of his girlfriend. The girls stopped in front of him. The aroma of their perfumes wandered in the air, and the Moon whispered softly that they had prepared a surprise, asking the young man to close their eyes. Hearing about the surprise, Zajin remembers how he opened his eyes slightly last year, and quietly promises to close it this time. To wake up and await, until the force, like a warm wind, slowly leaves the body. Suddenly the eyes are opened. The fear squeezes the breasts, and the mouth is torn to asking the girls what is happening. But the arms and body of the language have clamped invisible shackles, and the memory flies to the lost earrings. Loose Moon. Somewhere in the darkness, laughter, joyful, bells, and said his voice. Finally caught, he didn't even think that it would last for so long. The room suddenly appears in the room of fire, wind, and earth. The Zion is puzzled, not understanding why everyone gathered here. The fiery hero smiles, and with a spark in his voice promises to explain Zion why they are here. It seems like their brilliant plan, which has matured for 3 years. The hero of the wind said bitterly, They connected the strength to get rid of me, and the hero of the earth added quietly, "Those whom you believed were with us all the time." Zion frozen, not believing what he heard, as if the earth was protected under his feet. Stranging it is not true. And former comrades shrug, look away, silently hiding his eyes in the shadows where shame bellies. The characters laugh, throw reproaches of naivety, and evilly say that it was because of this simplicity that their plan has worked. Zion, through this laughter, asks why it all them. The view of the fiery hero is filled with disdain. He says that no one will overcome him. Even the demonic king recedes and becomes careful. The smoke of burned chips and whispers of fear. The wind hero smiled and threw him in the Siona. Of course you will envy, because I am not just the strongest, but also the most famous. Everyone whispers about me like a storm that does not subsides. All three are behind Zion. From them heard, even to those who own the elements. Everyone claims, the strongest now, ACS. Even the gods do not dare to despise him, because they see an exception in it. It is time to take away power, the hero says. 3 brave men apply crystals to the body. Zion magic should act. They whisper not to keep evil, and when the crystals rotate, Zion's body permeates unbearable pain. The cry of the deer pierced the walls, the crystals cracked. With each fragment, his strength extinguished, almost all the magic disappeared. The wind in the hands of the heroine whispers when she, having received the debris, quietly disappears behind the door. Outing out, the hero of the wind throws the fragments into the air. The wind picks them up, carries them far to scatter around the world, and the rustle of wings of the wind mixes with a light bell of debris. Returning to the rest, the wind threw Zion into the dust and, mocking, asks why not collect the debris himself. Zion stands silently, lowering his head under his stick. The view from above, the hero of the earth warns, now he will disappear in the dark forest away from all. Zion's body shuddered with pain, and the eyes flashed hard. The gaze slides to the moon. Is all those words spoken in the darkness of his sadness were an empty lie? And he throws Lamy. Was her laughter only playing when the sword was ringing in the air? In his voice was heard a desperate plea when he asked Emily, is there something in them, what connecting, which she spoke so often? The desperate cry of the deer piercing the air. Let someone answer him. And it is at this moment that the magic that clenched the body is crumbled by ashes. The figures are circling in the air, the girls hide in the shade, and the hero of the fire, still splashing from fatigue, is surprised. Where did the forces escape him from captivity so quickly? The hero of the wind noises his cloak, turns to the frightened hero of the earth and throws it. Let the Zion immediately teleport. The time shrinks around, every moment, like a storm. Zion throws his gaze to the moon and sharply demands the answer. And the moon trembles under his gaze, and ascending, he barely audible. She obeyed the order, only because she decided on it. Zion returns to Lamia. Her voice is cold. She only obeyed her real allies. He reaches Emily and hears a quiet, I obey orders. Sorry. I am very sorry. Zion fades, tight by faith. Even desperate efforts will not keep the most expensive. Everything is crumbled as soon as you touch. The hero of the fire requires the immediate transfer of Zion. The fiery hero targets the staff, shouts the spell of exile. The Zion does not fight. He indifferently gives himself a gust, and understands that such will be his fate, where he would not throw life. The dark forest hugs Zion. It falls in the midst of damp grass, looks into the dark sky, and in the chest compresses horror. All friends were only a ghost of his loneliness. The area falls, sits and hides the head in the palms. The memories of love dissolve, and trust is throbbed by sore throat. Again and over again whispers that he trusted them. The forest shakes a desperate cry, filled with pain from cruel betrayal. Trees shudder. In the air there is a shadow of despair. A large cave is blackened near Zion among the trees, and no sword, gear, or magic in their pockets. With these heavy thoughts, he slowly raises from the cold earth. The earth trembles under his feet. In the dark forest, Zion is raised, swaying, and with horror understands. This is another continent. The shrubs come from the bushes. The monster approaches. The branches break under its weight. Cumbersome orc is rapidly coming, preparing for the attack. Zion looks up at the giant and then unfolds black wings, feeling the rush of strength. A powerful swing, and sharp feathers with a whistle fly into the air, cut into the organ, and stitch the body through. The behaved enemy is severely swept into the dust, and Zion's wings disappear. He feels emptiness. To die in the world where blunt monster decides your fate is a true shame for the hero's heart. The rain is raining, the drops are rustled in the branch, and the zone wanders like a shadow, when suddenly everything around shines. The heart is shrinking. The look catches the fox that is frozen between the trees and looks at it. Zion's heart is pounding, but he tries to breathe calm. The creature in front of him seems to be beautiful. Her inner world of speech glows through the proud posture, and Zion, gently swallowing the air, is approaching. He asks the fox if she understands him. In response, he sounded yes, and Zion enthusiastically notes his pronunciation. The fox laughs that she just played with those who got lost in the forest. Zion asks the fox whether he will eat it, and the fox has played a fluffy tail playfully. I will not, and barely smiles noticeably. Silence lies between them, and Yin's gaze slips enthusiastically and with curiosity. With the eyes full of despair, the driver begs the fox to take his life, whispers about fatigue, and the gentle fox nods him in response. Silence hangs between them, and the views are intertwined without saying words. That day remained in the memory of Zion forever. The 8th birthday. The cold earth under the cheek. Body pain and cold fear that trembles in the chest. Several swords were stitched by a male body. A dead woman lay near the dust, and a living girl hung in her hair in the hand of a bloody man. The views of the statement came to the bandit smiles. They robbed until some were robbed, while others were mocked with helpless, and in the air smelled of fear. The gaze rushed to the baby. The sword waved with a whistle, and Zion, struck by horror, stood still like a fossil. But suddenly a stranger arises in front of Zion. He clicked with a sword, and all the bandits fell as if they were rolled. The man removes the sword, leans to the child, and sighs. Cruelty is excessive. Only one is alive. He extends his hands, whispers that the worst is behind. On the day when his parents and sister were killed, it was he, the hero of the twilight, and saved Zion. 12 years Zion, a student of the hero of darkness, became part of this shadow. And his life was filled with memories, sweet and bitter, like night through a rainy glass. The light rustle of leaves, the smiles of the moon, Lamia and Emily, then realized real happiness came, warm and real, like the sun after a long night. The happiness of the sand, it will fall through the fingers, every time it slips, and if fate exists, Zion is certain. He got the most tight her shadow. He extends his hands to the fox, begs to take his life. But the fox suddenly also asks for herself, and both of them fade under a thick breath of surprise that rustles between them. The question is whether Lys really asked his life, and he gently confirms. They feel a common desire. The fox smiles warmly, and Zion laughs quietly as if the breath of the wind touched herbs. Zion turns away, and the fox, having a fluffy tail, asks why he laughs so much. He has heard in the words of the fox the aging murmur about the past, apologizes because the fox resembles a person and seems too smart. The verse fox stops the tail and stands gracefully, the look serious. He says that Zion is very good, even if he is only a fox. Zion's eyes glow with grip. A large fluffy tail, soft wool, paws like velvet, and ears are trembling all the time and bouncing with tension. The smile slides on the face of Zion. The calm fills the chest. He looks back to the fox. He wants to talk, and the fox in response smiles and asks to give him everything at first. And at the same moment, the monster flashes behind the back of Zion. From the cry of the wounded, even the air shudders. Zion with his face deviates from the fire and explains that he was distracted and did not notice the attack. Lys Shepoche is a Chibolin, a master of stealing from behind. Zion does not bring his eyes out of a burning creature. The cunning fox waves a fluffy tail and calls Zion in a cozy place. Among the fragrant field flowers on the old stump, Zion sits down, and the fox whisper, I am a kakuko. He asks to turn to him just a hook. He calls a guy a slight movement of his hand. Zion seems and quietly confesses. The former hero has already become. Haku understands this, waves his tail and confesses. He knows little about people, because he lived only for more than 300 years. In the air, silence swells when Kaku carefully asks to tell about his life. Zion nods silently, inhaling the tart smell of coniferous resin. Haku begins. Once his family settled in this forest. Once upon a time, life flowed calmly, but death took away parents, a friend, even a child, and later a granddaughter. Zion asks whether the monsters are guilty of this, but the house is just sighing. So nature is said, it is different. Options are distorted monsters. Zion felt the incredible power of Hakugayan and realized he survived only through this power, but remained alone, gradually losing the most expensive. Haku notes that the usual demonic fox lives only half a century, but he breathes full breaths, and 300 years after knowing fatigue. The flower leaned to the hub. The petals flow quietly from the petals. He confesses that he is tired of loneliness and sees his life fades, and the look at Zion suddenly opens something new. The tears hit the cheeks of the former hero. He swallowed the pain, and the hack asks a friend in confusion of why he drowned in tears. The palms tremble, the voice breaks. Chian assures that he does not cry, but tears roll the river, and Hakuda asks with a smile if it is not too much for someone who does not cry. Drops fall on the hands of Zion. He, in a trembling voice, assures that it is not tears, but sweat, and the hack does not restrain laughter. I have never heard such excuses. Zion whispers to the fox, which understands his pain. Everything has lost the most expensive too. The family is only in memories. Hackett asks, let him tell his story, and the hero hesitates where to start. Hearing the story, the hacker is poured with tears. The life of Cheyenne from childhood was painful. Zion asks Lisa, what is the hardest thing about? The hawk whispers about the death of his grandfather neighbor, and Zion nods quietly, understanding the pain. The paw wipes tears out of the muzzle. The words get stuck somewhere in the throat. How painful, when betrayed these characters, only word and horror. The gaze slides to Zion. Will he dare to reveal? Zion quietly says that everything is fine, just the desire to live faded. He comes up from a wrinkled stump, and the hook proposes to go together. Forever say goodbye to this world. Zion nods. If the hack does not mind, he agrees. The fox replies that it is better to die together than lonely, even if you are not a person. The hawk laughs quietly, and Zion notices he has a strange, though cute laughter. The fox's muzzle changes. Wild rage burns in the eyes. It is pouring in words. It turns out that they will soon have to meet death. The last sparks of magic, and in the hands of the cordon is born a black, made sword. The sound of the blade breaks the air. He says with confidence that he is always ready, and in a moment stands in front of the fox, squeezing the handle. It is strange how easily perceives the end of the application, although yesterday he did not even imagine such death. And here, breathes calmly, because everything is not as scary as he feared. The sword whistles in the air until the hack is joyfully approaching and enthusiastically chewing juicy meat, the taste of which is a sweet aroma in the air. Zion looks at the fox, is surprised by his insatiability, and the hack with a grip swallows pieces of meat, without having time to wipe the bloody lips. The burro licks his lips and admits the lips. Maybe it does not look, but he eats a lot. Zion puts still meat. They say it meant the sort of appetite until the hack crumbs a juicy piece just on the teeth. The hack chews with greed. He has a fragile body, and asks the Cheyenne whether he is fat. Meat slips out of the mouth, and Zion jokes, all because of strange questions of the hacker. As it happened, the Zion cannot understand. The swords of the swords sang to death, and suddenly everything shook a loud roar, as if the earth had lost under his feet. The failure was felt bitter, and a soft smile stretches them food, as if he invited to the last dinner. He licks his lips, turns quietly, apologizes and confesses that he does not like raw meat, so he bakes him over fire. Zion's laughter is swollen in the air. White foxes are also able to live, and sometimes know that he is unclear. The hack will wrinkle in surprise, and after dinner puts the paw on the shoulder of the peon. The fox winks to him. Not there is something important in this life? The hawk whispers that has lived for too long, but the driver is another matter. He is just beginning. The driver shrugs his shoulders. He has nothing special. The hacker is surprised, asks for those whom they would like to see or apologize to someone. The shadows were chaotic in the memory of Zion. In the words of Kaku, a mention broke out, and at once Haku jumped. Someone is invisible already nearby. Somewhere in the darkness the steps were rustling. The hack is slowly appearing nearby, suggesting this man, because Zion may die after. Zion wanted to deny, but Haka stops and lies down at the feet of a man, calling Zion to sit on him. The soft fur of the fox touches Zion. He smiles gently, turns on her back, quietly apologizing, and looks in surprise from above, because the fox seems huge to him. Haku is interested in where the person to whom Zion seeks to ask. Zion explains, she is in the village of Kura, immediately, in the same land. Haku's face is brighter. These places are familiar to him, and he was once greeted in the Kura. The head is rushing forward, the crunch of a branch under his feet and a wild wind in his ears. The forest flies towards them. Zion thinks that he did not accidentally meet the hook right here, and moved here inadvertently. And she may ask her grave to visit her, and in her voice she has heard a cool wind whisper. The village of Karu met travelers with a familiar silence. Haku says with a smile that nothing has changed here. He once saved these people from a fierce monster, but now he is unlikely to recognize one of the old acquaintances. One of the inhabitants throws a careful look at them. When Zion recognizes the axe of the axe, it runs quickly, healthy. They say, years have passed, and the heart still remembers their meeting. The sound is spreading the village. The axe of the axe has returned. The village breaks down, the door is slammed, people run to Zion, their eyes glow. They were waiting for spring after a long winter. The gray old man approaches and thanks Zion for the visit. He welcomes, stops for a moment, focuses on his breath, and does not dare to voice his thoughts. The smell of smoke has not yet managed to dispel when the Zion asks the old man about Lin. It is not in the village now and probably will soon return. Zion sighs quietly. He should first decide an important business. The paws of the hawk and the Cheyenne are rustling with the leaves of the cemetery, and the fox sighs all the glory of Zion. No one else notices the rare fox monster. Zion quietly puts a bouquet of field flowers on a cold stone, rustles the stems. He once took care of everyone here, but this woman was special, and died through him. The hacker bows his head with tenderness in front of the grave. The verse says that he came as a friend of Zion. And the hatching shadow of the sun looked with a cold stone, and the pain remembers Marie. Suddenly something hurts, something in the head. The zone rotates, rubs the temple, the potatoes roll under his feet, and someone is approaching them. The little hand raised the potatoes. The girl quietly asked why he came. Recognition broke out in his gaze because it was Lin, the one he was so looking for. A barely noticeable smile of the amount flashed at the Zion. They did not see so long, he whispered, and Lin reminded him that he swore no longer to return. The apology broke from his mouth. The line through the potatoes and squeezed sharply. If you were already on the grave, everything, go away. But the senior appeared nearby. He thundered, not understanding how the line could say. The old man says, in everything that happened to Marie, there is no guilt of Axe. On the contrary, many people he rescued. Requires Lin apologies. Heavy knocking on the floor. The line turns sharply, throwing off the space. It is not her guilt, and then breaks on to cry, enough! And in tears run out, the sound of its steps dissolves in the night silence. The elder apologizes to the exom for Lin, but Zion asks not to justify. He says, Lin behaves sincerely, so he does not have to punish her. He only wants to be alone. Before the grave, Marie Zion is quietly confessed. So much time flashed, everything changed, heroism left behind. In a muted light, a maiden's silhouette is mentioned like a shadow in the wind. Marie's smile warmed the air. Zion leaned on one knee, confessed that he wanted to meet the dawn in this village, and Marie, without hesitation, took his ring on her finger. Over time, a threat hung over the village. In the surrounding, it was circling a long time. The residents lived in fear, the alarm tucked closely, and he only watched. Before the coffin, Zion, with others, said that when X did not, the village came to the village, and Marie, in the fire, protecting the lagging child, burned down with the cry and heat of the fire. Little Lin, through tears, asks why X did not come for so long. If he appeared earlier, her sister would be alive, and the promise to defend forever was a lie. The silence stood near the Mariev tomb. The words were stuck in the throat. And when he reached another's threshold and knocked, the door opened. Lin. Her gaze changed instantly, noticing Axel. With the fire in her eyes, she sharply asks what he gets from her, and in response hears calm. He just wants to say, nothing more. Xian, with sadness in his eyes, confesses. He is no longer a hero and wants to atone for guilt, so he asks Lin to ask for anything. The line thinks for a short time, sighs sadly, and finally agrees. Asks Zion to catch a golden snake for her. A rare, like a mirage in the desert. A creature. The ACS listens to a surprise that alarming anticipation is spinning in the air, as such snakes appear every 100 years. The silent wrinkle of Lena, the memory of the evil anticipation of her heart. She asked to stay, but his ears were not heard, and the Zion is low with apologies that they only ignite her anger. Lin sharply slams the door in front of his nose, firmly demanding that he never shows again. And the snake is not needed, you hear. Behind the door, Lin has frozen. Her gaze slides to the shiny ring on the table. Her palms froze, and with pain in her voice she turns to her sister, not knowing what step. Hake goes to Sayana and asks whether he has finished. In response he hears, "Almost, it is left to find a golden snake in the mountains." In the heart of Haku, joy is flashing because he sees that it is really important for a friend. Cyan asks if the hack will remain or leave the village. He smiles, tired, and replies that he will go, although the conversation with the elder about the fate of the village took away too much time and effort. The words emerged, as if through fog. Mountains meet travelers with fresh wind. The hack asks whether the snake lives here. Zion states, nodding, they say lucky. They find in a few days, and no, a moon to scratch. Hao jokes that it is better than in the dark forest, and Zion only shakes his head without agreeing. Not hoping for forgiveness, Ziyang still stubbornly looks for a line of a golden snake, dreaming of seeing at least a sparkling of hope in her eyes. Among the rustle of the forest, the hook is heard as Zion says, "A golden snake is, of course, a snake of the color of the sun, but it is too careful, not so easy to see it." Cheyenne mutedly says that this snake appears rarely, so it is necessary to carefully straighten all the corners, and the hack with a slight nod agrees, sliding his eyes on the shadows. The call of Cyan was divided, and here the hack, feeling the wool, suddenly remembered something important. Barely restrained his smile and stretched out the gloves, gently saying, "These are much better." Skion touches gloves, smiles warmth, and asks the hack, where he has so beautiful, strong things, in his voice to hear sincere curiosity. Eyes shine with delight. Haku replies, "The seller from the store to the chicken himself gave these things, and did not even take the money, though Kaku tried to pay because it was only a drop of gratitude for the act of Zana." With a smile, Kaku notes that the peasants are sincerely loved, and Zion is folding. People are good here. Everyone's heart is open. The grass rustles under the fingers of the deer. He looks back to the hack and asks whether there are fines, and at that moment before the hack, rushing the scales, crawls the snake. Zion agrees that the tiger snake is quite suitable, but X asks to be careful. If the hack is irritated, there will be a bite. The snake hisses, preventing the hack, twisting in the grass like a living lightning. Jump, and teeth clutch into a fox nose. Because of the bushes, she looks like an Aku, boastfully announces the bite, and Sion whispers with a feverish friend, "I'm very poisonous." The strange moan erupts from the mouth of Kaku. He falls to the side, grabbing the side, and whispers that hurts him. Zion, holding his breath, rushes to a friend. Hacho sincerely thanks Zion for the meeting, smiles warmly, and gently lowers his head on his fragrant grass, saying goodbye to his eyes in which joy glows. Zion's gaze slides on the fox indifferent. With a bitter derision, he asks whether such a game deserves such a game, and the hack is lazy and, smiling cheerfully, saying that it would be good, and he is supplied. Hare is filled with laughter and apologizes, and Zion gently strokes the fluffy tail of the fox, joking that he was a real brawler, however. Kaku with a warm smile remembers. They have long become a tradition, so he used to play with his relatives when they were still breathing in life. She nods, reminds of a snake, and a friend promises not to forget about the search. The next day of searching for a hacker and a Shion of the verse rested together, and the fox sadly said that the snake was never found. Zion only said quietly, "No one promised an easy way." Hako says he heard about Lin and Marie, or more precisely, the eldest decided to share it. Zion understands everything. Fox does not consider it the fault of Zion, and ACS expresses gratitude. From conversations, the stomach grumbles hungry, he says, and the fox straightens, slightly slides his paws into the grass. He moves to hunt without looking back. A few hours later, among a pile of steaming mascara, Zion asks if it is not too much, but Kaku only jokes that the stomach ordered to hunt further, and Zion promises to fry everything, what pleases the baldness. On the third day, Haku asks Shion to describe the golden snake once again. They say, he just did not go into the world, not because he became old. Zion enthusiastically says that her scales glows dark yellow, as in a rattlesnake snake. Haku lends to the near snake and asks whether she looks like it. Shion confirms, and Haku whispers that it can be profitable with such. In a moment, it comes to them that it is the same golden snake, and their feet carry out carefully. Zion whispering Hakudi to go to the right, the fox nods and dives into the shadow. Kaku's paw with lightning fell on the snake and already rustled between the grass. He admitted that this viper was more agile than it seemed, and Zion, averse, asked to catch it alive, and Haku changed the strategy. He says that he will use his skill. The wool twists into tight tangles, sharp needles break from the body and fly simply into a snake. A few beats, and the golden snake fades. The Haka explains that it is his woolen needle. By changing the hardness of wool, it can sleep or paralyze the enemy from one touch. The harvest gravely praises a friend, picks up the snake and laughs, throws. It seems that the hack has used sleeping pills. The hacker looks into the snake and is surprised why he does not sleep. The Zion explains, the snakes do not blink because they have no eyelids. Looking at the dawn, the hack could not understand. 300 years were missed, and he did not suspect. Zion easily claps him on the shoulder, they say, let the snake unknown. A miracle not in knowledge, but in the ability to shoot wool, like needles. The thin laughter of the hack rings in the air, asks Cheyenne whether he really thinks, and Confusion states, everything is due to the hack. The fox is playful again, asking the words of admiration. The hacker waves his tail, and confidently promises, Lin will be delighted when he sees this golden snake that shines in the sun. The driver sighs quietly. Let it be enough for his first and last court. Hackett asks not to froze his soul with such sad words and confesses. He thought for a long time why the line needed a gold serpent and never understood. Science states that it is a rare monster, and a lot of gold can be resolved for the snake. Haku feels that he has forgotten something important about the golden snakes, but he slips out, and suddenly he is anxiously fading somewhere in his chest. Hardly hearing the thud of 3 animals that raced closer, the hook asked Zion to rush to his back. They could escape faster. The hack rushes without feeling the ground under his feet. But the wolfish beasts are getting closer. In their eyes the glitter of hunting, and it becomes clear that the test is directed at them. Seeing how the wolves rush to them, Zion exclaims the fox that the attack has come. Haku only nods. Trust me, and widely opens his mouth. The fox was lightning at every wolf and rushed further. The wool sparkled, and Shion looked with surprise. The hack only shrugged, they say. It was easy. Haku assures that he has claws and fangs like the rest of the animals. And Zion is interested. Can he have a bald fire at any moment? Haku replies, this is possible only if the enemies are kept at a certain distance. And against the individual monsters, this technique is barely noticeable, like the wind between stones. Zion reminds. Haku still has the ability to shoot wool. But he just shrugged, like a fox with 1,000 puzzles, and quietly murmur, time to return to the village and transfer the snake to Lin. Returning, they solidify. The village is destroyed. The smoke will flow between the ashes. There is a smell of burning in the air. The hack is wary of something strange, and Kian whispers hastily, you need to run faster. Walking barely, Zion rushes to the elder and asks what happened here. The old man inhale. Acts in time, because an hour ago, robbers suddenly flew into the village. Zion, wounded, asks for hired hunters. The old man sighs. Everyone was killed, and the leader of the bandits was so strong that no one could imagine, as if the storm went through the village. The smell of anxiety pierced the air when Zion finally asks who Lin is and whether they stole it. The elder sighs and admits painfully. They were taken away by everyone, even women and children, who were driven to the south, so they ask for help in acts. Zion bows and says that it is not necessary to ask him. Marie was born in this village, so he will do everything he can to save his native land. The body of the frozen warrior bows to the body, carefully lifts his sword and quietly whispers with an apology. Then a quick step goes to the hook and asks if help is needed. The fox puts his paw on Zion's shoulder. His eyes shine with determination. Do not ask, I will go with you at least. It was soft. Zion jumps on the fox as a true friend. Zaya asks the peasants to wait a little more. He is already on the approach. Understands that such a disaster is not the first time. But the perpetrators of the demons or monsters here are in vain. In human hearts, the shadow of evil is hidden, and especially it grows where noble and peasants meet. This struggle forces even the heroes to choose their side. The world was already tired of Zion. His whole family disappeared in front of his eyes in the face of a frantic road, and then he silently swore he will become a hero and will change everything on this earth. But even when he became strong, human greed, endless and insatiable. It was not possible to change. It hides in the dark, whispers and stretches again. Somewhere in the Hook Valley he notices robbers. Zayev in his head is throbbing. Even if the world does not change, he will not betray his heart, never throws in the wind. The steps are loud and dust. Haku almost catches up with robbers, one of them whispering about harassing the monster with a monster, and the leader sharply orders everyone to stop. The hack stops sharply before robbers with brilliant weapons. Zion slides on the ground, counts 13 figures, and feels anxiety. The equipment is too high quality, as for ordinary robbers. In a crowd of women and children who are carving a ripping cart, Zion notices the exhausted Lin with a broken face, and quit the sharp question of the chieftain. Did you really raise their hand? Corresponds calmly. There was no choice. They kept up to the last, so they got so much pain. Mulcom looks at Lin. It seems alive. The sword is squeezed from the vibration in lightning. And Zion looks. Why attack the village if these attackers are not at all like the average robbers? The chief praises his attentiveness and, as a gift, promises Zion to open a secret. They are mercenaries, and the task was to grab several women. The smell of fear hangs in the air. Ask who hired you, throws Zin, but the bandit is silent. Only the nod shows on the hack and wears, understand with the big dog. The robbers with a mocking cursing rush on the hide, calling it a dog. The insulted hack hisses that he is a fox, not a dog, and suddenly one of the attackers cuts a sword. Xian sounds anxiously, or is all right with him. The bandit's sword cracks, and the hack whispering does not worry. His fur is stronger than steel. Throws enemies on the ground, scattering them in dust, and shouts. Zion stands in front of the leader of the gang, and he asks whether he understands why he ordered people to fight with the dog. Xian silently thinks, probably the hack is stronger than him. The bandit laughs. They will only interfere. He says, let Zion be strong, but there will be no victory. Heroic force gives the advantage. Many swords emerge from the air. The swords cut the air, and the Zion is cleverly evading, feeling. The power in it is real, but if it is all that it is capable of, even the hero's gift obtained is fragile as a flame in the wind. Suddenly, from the back of the dearest, the bandit emerges, swinging through his teeth. Now he is not to the battle, and not to disappear. The bandit's blade whistles in the air, and Zion reflects the metal on the metal, strains to the last vein, and his sword flies in response, ringing from force. To the surprise of Zion, the bandit is cleverly off, as if he reads his thoughts and escapes, and the blow with a whistle splits the air and knocks on the ground. He tells Zion that it has great power. The Zion rushes forward again. The blows will pour one after the other, but the enemy easily reflects them, as if playing with the wind. The bandit waves his saber, calls it a mystical saber of destruction, and shines quickly, exploding with blue zippers, as if every blow is able to overthrow anyone. The sword of Ziona with a crack is scattered on the debris, and in a moment the bandit with a hissing cuts again. The saber flies up, the voice is sure, it is the end, and the cold blade stops, directed simply at Zion. Suddenly the Zion disappears simply from under the nose, and the group looks alert, looking for it. Meanwhile, the shadow behind your back is Iliac, and slowly reincarnated. Zion slowly emerges from the darkness, gently, like a shadow, lifts the sword's sleeve above the enemy, clamped in a trap. The air rings hard before the blow. The time for the impact is missing. The enemy is cleverly evasion. The driver is surprised by his new speed, almost feels. This enemy seems to see the course of events in advance. The opponent with a voice remarked, "It is already dangerous," asks, "Is black magic?" Zion nodded, barely audible. "Yes, you guessed." Zion quietly remembers. His former skill was a sense of presence, like a touch through the air. Throwing the sword sleeve to the ground, he sighed. If it was only it, he would barely feel something. Zion squeezes two thoughts in his head, and suddenly understands. The abilities of the free sight hero give him a look through time, a chance to look into the future, to listen to whispering, even invisible events. According to Zion, it turns out that the customer of mercenaries is a hero. The mercenary is silent, and then quietly confesses. It is not true, and he is defenseless. He is not able to take strikes and does not hold the sword in his hands. The mute zone extends the hands. The dark sphere pulsates between the fingers. It rotates to the shade, and if it was a sword, then its grip still does not release the prey. The words fly into the dark. Let you turn to the sword. Silence, devastating and thick, suddenly split, and in the hand of Zion appears dark as a sin, a sword. The sword breaks into motion, and it breaks out of a black, as if the abyss, the wave. The darkness spreads, howls in the air, leaving behind the shadow and whispering of a cold wind. The mercenary stops Saber's blow, laughs, in vain. He sees every movement, but Zion squeezes his teeth and throws. Now you do not care if you notice something at all. The darkness touches it and dissolves, as suddenly the mercenary notices. Around everything quickly fills thick, like smoke. Darkness. The mercenary looks anxious. The noon sun has disappeared. The darkness is shaking around. The air subsides, and silence presses into the ears. Awareness of sudden blindness compresses the breast. But why is the eyes of goals? Zion explains that the first stroke of the sword had to take away all the feelings. But it seems that now the weapon steals only one thing. Just as it is now. The servant falls on his knees. The event sighs, says that it is in vain to fight further, and suggests to surrender, and the mercenary, smiling coldly, directs his saber to his chest. The event takes him by his hand. Not let him do it. Sudden movement. The saber cuts the body, spills hot blood, and it falls deftly, contaminating the earth. He is late. He is bitterly understanding Zane. And the hack goes closer. Fatigue sounds in his voice. Enough. There are dozens of overthrown robbers in the dust and shadows. The smile flashes on the face of the hawk. From the hawk, the smaller one, and did not expect. The look slides to a cart, where only the stolen girls are closely sitting, scared, like birds in a cage. The bitter taste of blood on the lips. It is difficult to open the eyes. A Zion appears in front, lifts Lin, whispers that everything feels without words, and pulls out of his pocket the last little cone. Relieves fear. The raspberry bottle sparkles in the hand of the state. It promises Lin to be encouraged, but in her view, doubt whether it is worth testing it. Zion claims that she uses him for her sake. It helps Lin to swallow the potion, and in the eyes of her body is filled with force. Wounds disappear, and the skin pulsates life. The line looks at the bottle, inhales a bitter aroma, and throws a drunken. At home as many as 10. But it's not salvation, it's just cheap mixtures. Tears roll the cheeks with Lin, the voice trembles. Why don't you care for me, even after all my difficult words? Zion calmly said. First you need to relax, everything is well. He removed the raincoat, carefully covered Lin, and quietly stood and disappeared behind the door, leaving the slight aroma of moisture. Lin squeezes the jacket and whispers quietly, and Zion only smiles warmly. Sighing, the Shion and the hawk return to the village, hearing under the feet of a soft rustle of herbs. The elder thanks for the help, puts a bag of coins in the palm of the rustle, and says that it is only a small gratitude. But Zion refuses and asks them to spend them on the revival of the village. Zion confesses that glitter, not his element. The former hero of darkness only shrugged, and instead spilled in an awkward silence. Only the hacker was barely smiling, but others did not stretch anything. Zion reassures. There are no robbers left here, so you can relax. If you feel something or anxious, it will always return. The elder squeezes his palm and thanks for the salvation. Zane asks the elder to repeat these words for Lin, but the old man is already raised to call the girl. But Zane stops gently. It is not worth it. He still goes. The Shion and the hack are left the village, slowly disappearing in the valley. Hiding in the shade of trees, they look at the village that melts in the distance. Ziyang whispers that he will never see those people again, and the Hackett of the verse asks to talk about it. Zajan replies that he also has something to say. Behind the cry flies, and in the wind, worrying, Len runs, waving his hands. Zion is amazed. She really overcame the way for the sake of him, but Len just asks to stop. She has something else to say. She confesses Zioni, who knew. Her sister asked him to go to work that day. But even if it is true, the stubborn Zion is stubborn, not to erase the guilt. But Lin is quietly denied that it is not a sin and not at all. She says, no one has the right to blame him. He gave so much forces to the village and her sister. He has already become a hero in their eyes, serving them like a quiet, starry night. Lin huddled to Zion, whispering, as she had hurt and lonely as a child. She wanted to blame someone, but could not. And now, it does not need it. Lin puts his hands on his shoulders, whispers, now it's time to live for himself. The hero has already remained in the past, and that's enough. Smiling, she asks, how many people he saved today? In response, Zone smiles quietly, and Lin, stretching the basket, gently says, "It is difficult for you or not. You have no right to die." In the basket, Zion finds a cone with a gold snake, the same one recently presented by Lin. She whispers to make her delicious sake and drink on the road, and the Zion promises with joy, wrapping her. Lin, with a soft smile, promises to wait for a new meeting, and Zion assures that he will certainly return. Lin says goodbye and quietly disappears behind the door. Suddenly, the hook fades, then whispering excitedly, he remembered something important. He apologizes that Zion was scared, and his voice trembles from an unexpected memory. He says it is a golden snake. Zion looks with a spark of curiosity, and the hack remembers. 3 times 100 years ago, he heard a fun joke from a common man. They tell when a tired husband lost his hope. His wife poured him a sake of golden snakes. The sweet aroma spilled around the room, and the shadow of death dissolved in laughter. The Zion felt that Len had been bitten, and, having taken his breath, informed the hacker it was necessary to talk. He is no longer ready to share his last choice right now, asks to wait. Zion dreams of seeing so much, wants to absorb the world on full breasts, and quietly hopes to stay. Hacha sighs. He wanted to talk about it for a long time, to postpone the solution for a moment and just catch the taste of life next to it. It is true happiness for him. Suddenly the stomach stirred up so loud that Cheyenne was throwing with a smile. It is a hook, otherwise it could not be. The fox is in a marketing that his fault is his fault, and disappears rapidly in search of food. In the depths of the breast, something new is shrinking. Once everything was cold, and now everything around was breathing differently, as if the darkness has lost its power over it. Slowly rises from the cold earth, inhales dampness and asks, "Is this a second life?" And then smiles. To travel near the fox, not so bad. The secret look from the back. The young man presses his palm to one eye, and from the other eyelashes, trembling magic pours like a shimmering smoke in night silence. It seems to him that the plan is destroyed, though he shared his knowledge with others. The legs were smiled, and he is quietly asking in the dark, will the hero there be steps when the forces disappeared? Before the conflict itself, the hero of the Four Lands stopped. The shadow slides his face, and in the corners the mouth trembles an evil smile. Something coming. The inaccessible Oregon rose a stone solid, and a stranger on the onslaught, and a shawl of magical creatures were broken against its walls, as if a wave of a rock. The city hugs a wall of special material. No force or witchcraft will destroy it. Even magic slides on it without leaving any scratches. You can become the heir of one of the heroes, having received his heroic ring. Zion says Haka that the second, and in both cases, 2 heroes never keep the same element. Intuition leads Ziana following the bizarre patterns of the enemy strategy, while he steps to the gate of an inaccessible organ, where the walls breathe with stone confidence. The guards suddenly close the bench, surrounds it, suspecting the threat. Zion calmly says that he is only a traveler, and near his faithful beast, which man will not be harmful. The guards ask for evidence. The hacker sits down, and immediately begins to plow his tail, affecting Zion, causing quiet laughter and surprised views. Zion shows love to touch, and even dust collects, because it communicates. The guards are noticed, extremely resourceful. Too large, not gray, but white, like snow. That is a rarity for these places. According to Zion, the hack has a special spark, and guards recognize this creature is a real miracle, magic in its purest form, creating the highest level. The traveler did not believe. Where did the ordinary man come from? Zion was silently blinking and noticing that he was able to spell. The guards only demanded, "Register. Without this, we do not let." The hacker believes in his own strength. He throws the muzzle forward and howls it loudly, and in his ears ringing, the guards are impressed. A loud roar erupted behind the walls of the city, a magical spell that steals courage and the cold on the back. Hokoka whispers about this, but only Zion feels the meaning of his words. Yes, it is strange. I turned off all but it. The hacker looks at the tight guards. The eyes are widely open with surprise. Kakua apologizes, and Zion is just sighing. Everything will be fine. The main thing is that they have passed unharmed. Previously, it would be quite simple to show the ring. On the way, Zion advises to register in the Adventurers Guild, so it will be easier to adapt to the city. He guesses the hacker. He probably refers to the 3rd branch of the guild. At every step, people throw alert on the hack. Anxiety trembles in the air, and the hacker sighs, apparently scares them. Zion assures that even knowing that it is only a pet, fear does not disappear. The hawk offers to sit down, so it will be calmer, and Zion agrees, though he does not want to be different from the crowd. Haku says his name is not just white, but also a colorless fox, and jokingly invites Zion to see another likeness. But the Zion is waving, too early. He trusts Kaku completely. In the glow of adventures, all the views turn to the hack. Science whispers quietly, they say, did not want to draw so much attention, and the hack just smiles. They say, all because he is here. The rack is suitable for the rack. He wants to register. The girl smiles, her hair fell on her eyes, and gently says, first, you should listen carefully to the rules. Guild is a branch that operates in every country focused on the exchange of knowledge and communication. Only 3 of these departments, and the ranks grow from E to A, then S and the highest, SS, and if you do not cope with the tasks, the level is reduced. She says that in each department everything is in its own way. Somewhere they are recruited in a row, and if you are lucky enough to go through, they give out a plastic card with a new name, and air becomes more difficult than waiting. She asks Zion, warrior or mag. He replies, something close, but he will not call himself a magician. He assured that this is not at all related and quite safe. There is nothing to worry about. The girl asks to tell about his abilities, and he says with a smile that he is skilled in fencing, and still possesses magic, even dark. Hearing this, she grasps, and the cry breaks out of her mouth. With a smile of admiration, she says he is very cool, almost like Mr. Sokir. Zion confesses that Mr. AKS respects. The girl with a sincere smile adds that he has been admiring him for a long time, though he was in their city, and did not have time. Cheyenne asks Hakud to stop. The girl tells, there are 2 entrance exams ahead, a long with a 3-month-old runner and a short, like one deep breath of the morning, just half a day. Choose the second, she advises. What do you need? Zion is interested. Confirming my desire to pass, and then I will reveal everything, whisper in response. Her words are heard mysteriously. The short test is difficult and dangerous, but time is enough. Ozai does not even hesitate. He chooses a short road, although only sharp angles and shadows of danger are ahead. The girl warns, they can injure or kill. It is necessary to sign. And in the air the silence was already anxiously, and the adventures are slowly approaching. The steps are heard in the dark. Weapons are embarrassed from the vagina. The face is burning. They assure Zion that the choice of the second test was his failure. And now the real game will begin, although he is lost in their words. Rumors walk. The dealer chases after them throughout the city, and the girl carefully stretches something into his palm, quietly bursting into the night silence. The teacher explains that in 3 hours you should collect all the hats in the room, otherwise there will be a defeat. The hat will break or run out of time. The attempt is not enrolled. Zion questions about the choice, and in response, take that to the liking, they say. The adventure seekers are allowed everything that you want, she whispers. None of seconds is no longer moving, so the dealer can escape. The hack asks whether they will cope, and the Zion nods confidently. If they jump out, everyone will run immediately. In this case, the hack says, it is better to gather everyone just here. Xian smiles. If it is already joined, you should put it on the full, but the eyes are begging for the hack for support. The traveler murmur that his beast, though powerful in appearance, will still not withstand, and compassion here is not to be expected. Zion recognizes gloomily. He did not think about it yet, only looking for how to collect everything in the heap together. The traveler waves the sword, demanding to try more, and the Zion shows a tiny dark cube. They say better. The cube in his palm suddenly throbs and sparkles quietly. The cube suddenly grows, swallows the room, and in the dark around travelers rise scales of panic. Neither sound nor light, only heavy, intense air. Panic gathered everyone in a tight, fixed circle. The voices are heard from everywhere, but for the girl everything is lost in the dark, as if it was swallowing the night. It cannot even move, only to hear, someone requires light fire. The girl stumbles and falls, but Zion has time to pick her up, says apologies. He did not want her to find herself in it, and her cheeks flashing a gentle blush. The darkness has melted. Zion muted the girl who had fallen on him, whether everything is fine with her, and his voice trembles in the darkness. She jumped back with awkwardness, cried off and could not believe that he had dared. Science taught that he could. At the feet of Zion, a bunch of hats, which Kaku brought and laid carefully. The Zion carefully counts the prey as Kakuki jokingly claims that he had collected the most, and Zion almost everything. Dark magic twisted the space, and while everyone was clutching his eyes, he managed to gather everything around. Travelers only thought who really was this mysterious figure. On the farewell of the hack praises them. They did not give up without a fight, did not hurt anyone. And Zion Versi notes, his dark magic could swallow the whole city, but the forces weakened. Everything here seems strange and too fragile, like the breath of a light wind, says the hack. Zaom wants to return everything as it was, and advises to spend the last money for the night, and the hack only sighs and offers to spend the night outside the city. Zion proposes to look for a place for a hack, though it is likely to be too high. He says, tomorrow they will go to work, and here in the breast of Kaku something is fluttering. A vague anticipation. Every face flickens before his eyes. He looks at everyone around, and Zion asks, does he feel something? In the breast of the hack, a strange sensation is throbbing from the beginning. They barely enter the city as it envelops from the inside. He believes that a god-shaped hero goes here. 2 years, Zajin confessed. All this holds on to me. In the hack, the eyes expanded. So much time. And Zaom added that he heard about his change even then. The new hero, passionately breathing the hack, has been following him for 2 years. 2 years ago, he recalls, Zajan was on another continent, and asks whether the hero could get there. Or Zajan is too strong, or he is a stranger in general. He has many such followers. Zion throws the question, will you go alone? The hub replies that yes, and when he learns, he will return. The smell will help to find the way back. Zion crossed the threshold of a favorite hotel for animals. He felt the native aroma of wool and fresh coffee. In the air, a phrase was in the air. Someone boasted money, and it caught his hearing. They came to the city by order of the master, and even a single discount was obtained. The boys are advised to complain to the mountain, because they were invited. The boys' eyes shine. Their teacher is a dark hero, Mr. X. In the corridor, the whisper is buzzing. Even the walls of the hotel were surprised to hold their breath. The driver sees these people for the first time. Strangers hide in his name, Rob. The man presses the girl and asks for proof. Guests with the name of the hero are almost gone. The young man explodes fury, but the man not immediately. I believe you. The other is involved in the conversation. The students of the great hero do not have to behave so, though he doubts the truth of this. The sticky fingers squeeze the shoulder, and the other young man threatens. Here, they say. Now show the evidence. Fingers shine. Magic will already flow in the air. The strength of darkness beats into the chest, and magic slipped out of the body instantly. The young man requires an apology, and a cry of fear cuts air. Zion understands. It is time to intervene. The demand to stop erupts powerfully, and the exhausted man falls on the ground just under their hands. The young man whispered not to climb higher, stood before the owner and threw. Does he believe now? The owner of the tavern apologizes, says, you do not need to pay. The boys, having fun clapping Zion on the shoulder, go away, and the axe is staring at the frightened faces of the guests. Zion asks 2 guys to send spells on him. He says with longing how the strong use the weak and get everything, and the anger bites him inside from this thought. The Drian calls deception for the sake of the freebie the magic of moral abomination. But the boys are already laughing here. They offer, maybe he also fell as much as he bought a strange oblivion. They blamed the magic on him. The streams of light and the heat swelled in the air. But Zion did not move with his muscle. The sorcerers enjoyed. They were able to suck as much force as they wish. Zion is quietly confessing, if he is good, indifferent to someone else's pain. I saw a lot of proud, broken here. He squeezes their hands, and they wonder why he does not fall, even when they sucked magic. Maybe everything goes on the contrary, says Zion. Suddenly the guy scattered in pain, the body shuddered. Zion explained, magic, like poison, heals a little, and if too much, the heart does not withstand. The boys fall, exhausted, the skin of the sticky sweat. In the air there is a bitter charm. Zion says they have absorbed too much magic, and this condition is only possible because of darkness. The guys cry, rushing in pain, asking Zion to help. He just sighs. They have too much magic, wait half a day and will pass. The boys are fine to give everything to make it easier. Zion's voice sounded strictly, now not just an apology, but also cleaning after himself. The guy is apologized immediately. Zion is gently calming, helps to climb, and in response, he hears sincere thank you. The owner's daughter approaches Zion, gently touches his palm, thanks, and quietly calls his brother. In her voice is heard warmth and trust. There's a slight aroma of perfumes and awe of heart. Hugs her, smiles at full teeth. Haku appears in the hotel. With excitement says that there is a real paradise here. The girl laughs. They say he is a real dog. And a hack in response, I say fox. The smell of fresh underwear and a little bitter tree met Jana when the owner offered them a discount room. Zion nodded with gratitude, and Kaku was just confusedly clung. It seems that something has just happened. In the room, the smell of dust mixed with anxiety. She quietly asks the hack to share the news, and he nod. It is important, in particular, about the hero who collected the traces of Zion. This immediately affected the ACC. In the air, talking about the mysterious, the strongest heroes is heard. Haku dreams of finding their strength. Zajan, without sighing, says that the relationship is difficult. But if they help, they will become friends. Somewhere near something glowing with the magic of stones, and Zion is still immersed in the work of the guild. Suddenly, a girl runs into the room, clicks for dinner. He just has to smile. The hawk quickly leads him to the dining room, and Shion promises, tomorrow the road and work. Subsequently, 4 goblin hands, 30 mushrooms, and 8 shoots of waru grass are brought to the guild to report prey. The girl smiles. Everything has passed great. The grass is like a fluff, but it pleases Zion. She thanks both, calls the hack gentle, and praises for the courage to take for the difficult task on the first day. Lily, a little embarrassed, calls her name and smiles. They say nice to get acquainted. Further confused in the words and looks at Zion like a sorcerer, similar to the Axel, and he waves. They say, nothing heroic. For Lily, he is a hero. Yesterday he did not raise the sword on those who attacked him, but saved it. It embarrassed by praise and notices the absence of a hacker. The hacker wants him to understand everything himself, and in the meantime the guy rushes the field. The grass rustles under his feet, in his chest trembles of hunting. Before the dragon of the hawk, the storm lifts. The sky splits thunder, and the lightning sizzle and hit simply in the monster. The fire quickly devours the monster. The hawk dumps the burnt wool, rejoices in victory, and imagines the joy of Shion, pulling behind him by a mutilated enemy on the hot, smelling ash of the earth. In the guild he finds a friend, calls to go with him, and when Zion comes out, the look catches the body of the monster. Kaku smiles and says that he brought a snake that is already waiting for an order. A woman approaches the table and says that you do not need to call. She is a guilder herself, smiles at a Shion. Sweet you my taste. Lily asks her to stop. In response, she laughter. The owner invites him to the room for conversation. She had already contacted the adventurers from the Golden Helmet Guild. They confessed that they almost died if it were not for the magical beast that saved them. Awareness of salvation came. Gratitude was in the eyes of the hack. But when it came to the payment, she was only apologizing, because the order was not officially accepted, but instead suggested to sell them a snake for 800,000. The hacker recognizes that such a monster is rarely valued by the masters, and the skin is appreciated by the masters, from which jewelry and furniture come out of them. She asks if others agree. Xena does not want to sell everything. It is important for her to glue weapons or magical artifacts with the trophy, because the monster is born. And then the hostess, remembering how the monster saved adventure seekers, promises 10 million, offering raising to C rank. At lunch, the air smelled of warm bread, and Zion noticed they were lucky. Haku was proud of a full bag of money, and Zion added that Kaku was in fact sought to save adventure seekers, although he was silent about his unknown kindness. From a piece of food in the mouth, the words of Haku merge. Shan does not understand anything. Paying out, Kaku is interested in whether they go to the guild now, and Zion dreams of a new weapon or the return of stolen magical stones. Without these stones, the magic of Zana swoot, and it can turn into trouble. One stone is quite close, but without weapons it does not risk looking for it. It dreams of buying a magic sword, although it is difficult to get so hard. The hacker casts his gaze to the side. Here in the city, there is a guild of the house where dozens of orders are always burned, and even without craft you will not be left without earnings. Zion is interested. Does the guild pay more? The Hako states that the guild house is closely linked to the creators of magical weapons. When the old man meets them with a gentle voice, offering warm bread and enroll in the guild. They have two types of tasks: to help someone or find luxurious things, he explains. The reward will be points. They are easy to exchange for food or weapons. The rank system is not valid. Registration is available to all, if you do not fail at least one order. Zion believes they have powerful magical artifacts, and through cooperation with the craftsman, he hopes to get something really strong. Zion approached the bench, looking restlessly around. Saburin, the owner, grunting that the orders of the sea, but still listened carefully. Zion asked what could be shared with a sword, and patiently waited for a list of things. Hake and Shion's eyes glowing with joy, a dark knight comes into the legendary sword on the legendary sword. One that is not amenable to dark magic, and a hack cannot look away from the rare wild boar meat, which is almost nowhere to be found. Saburin is wondering if they found the right things. Noticing how Zion reaches the sword, he understands. This boy does not borrow, so he offers the task to the soul. Investigation of theft of magic artifacts is one of the urgent requests of foreign guilds, and Saburin warns. Difficult, but the award is generous. Zion agrees to start right now. Saburin is calling for himself. The man leads them to the composition, where it smells with dust and metal, and the shelves are full of magical good. It is from here that, under the call of orders, things go on long journeys. Today, too, they are preparing sending. At the entrance, the tension is raging. The guards move quietly, watch closely, and invisible spells swell in the air. Saburin whispers that the protection is weakened during transportation, so robbers use it. Last time, the strongest guards have already been removed, so no one guesses who stole things, and whispering the city is rumored. This is a chain god of death, a gang of hunters for spells. Zion is wondered whether he hits only at night. Innocent nods, asks for traces, and Zion silently squeezes his fingers. Dark magicians leave no trace, only void and cold in the air. He assures that he has a plan and asks to pass it on Saberagriz to carriers, and Shion quietly asks the hack whether he does not feel something in the air. Without emotions and the look of a hacker and a Shion. The fox asks about the plan, but Zion is just fading. The magic of the mind is not available. The trap will be. Something unknown comes out of the darkness. At night, dark magicians dominate. In the evening dark, the carriers whisper. This time the robbery will not be interfered with, relying on Saburin. He assures that he can be trusted. While everyone looks confused, the shadow sneaks to the carrier from the back. The abandoned erupts, lightly waving the dagger in the air. When the dagger is ready to fall, it suddenly disappears in the air. The bandit did not realize that dark magic was walking in the shade. Saber notices him, and the angry attacker rushes forward, taking a saber for a sorcerer. The powerful blow of Zion throws the enemy sideways, and Zion himself with crunching shoes runs through dust towards the bandit, ready to continue the battle. Zion's fists are poured with hail. The bandit covers the bandit, slides into the darkness, and is only shadow of the stuff on the wall. The shadow grows behind Zion. The voice whispers through the tension that his fate is solved. And the moment is fulfilled by the darkness, as if it was time to hold his breath. The tentacles are drawn to the dearest, but he cleverly evades. The bandit seems that the guy is just escaping, though he actually waits for magic to end, and it is worth a lot of strength. Inside shudders. The enemy has dark magic, whispering the swallowing paws and protects the carriers. The air is angry, smells of ashes and fear. The robber pulls the pill, swallows it, and at the same moment the eyes flash sharply. They have a new, wild power. Sharp tentacles are ripping from the ground. They rustle terribly. And Zion is wrapped in an instant, squeezing the body with a cold iron touch. Cold tentacles hamper the body, and controlled by a robber, cut through the flesh of Zion, from which blood protrudes immediately. The robber apologizes, they say. Now he became stronger, but in a moment the body of Zion disappears, leaving in the air uncertain breath and shadow. Black magic flashes. There are many shadows around it moving in the beat of its breathing. The thief does not understand how these mysterious doubles arose. It is enough to impress the real. But Zion warns, every double falls, but again stands, and the black magic that serves only to itself will not forgive. The bandit, unable to recognize the real one, swallows a few more pills, causing the muscles to strain, and the eyes flash with new wild power. He entrusts the dark snakes that are sniffed out of the shadows to deal with every clone. And in the meantime, he weakens as if something is being broken inside. Aloy blood flashes, the monster disappears smoke, and it moves down, lowered powerlessly into the dust. The pills are squeezed in the palm of Zion. he says with a bitter smile. He was well aware of what it would lead to, but chose the path of self-destruction, as if someone had forced him. The bandit is grieving where it is true, and Zion sees a thick darkness in his chest and is surprised how he touches magic at all. He asks where he knows about the shipping schedule. The bandit whispers that the dark is seen and known because they are scratched in the dark, but Zion feels that he lacks strength, and there is no deadly god a chain of a deadly god. There is only a pill for strength. Among the shadows, rumors are spreading. There is one who sees everything. The owner of the all, seeing eye keeps such under control, and magic reveals all the secrets for him. Blood is pouring on the sand. The bandit no longer breathes. The Drian is stunned why someone sacrificed life for the criminal, and suddenly a magical stone flashed in Pilotka. That's why the heart was so anxious. When the forces come back, it divides the blade and breaks into a crazy sword dance. The blade is singing in the air, whistling, leaving a sparkling trace. The word in front of him flew into the pages. Haku is surprised to catch himself in thought. It is not a dark but a true destructive magic. Zion rejoices that he returned the wind and did not let the sword from the guild. Kaku is bitterly said. More than 2 robberies. It remains only to find the hero with the all, seeing eye. Zion feels, somewhere nearby someone touches a charm of intelligence, as if an invisible arm is watching every movement. The conflict pulls everyone. Zion feels 5 magicians, the strongest in Oregon, 4 more weaker nearby. Kaku whispers, "They wait for us. Let's go." The driver just felt it and moves forward. From the top of the conflict, Zion sees how a powerful flow of magic is shimmering in the air. Hachao does not feel the thirst for murder, so they decided to fight honestly. Zion is convinced. Victory without any tricks behind them. Suddenly the shadows appear. ACS. The former hero, eyes vigilant, like knives. He confesses that he has been watching him for a long time, and then whispering the driver. The strongest is always looking for death, and these 4 are already in service. Marking confidently, the hero of the all, seeing eye calls himself Randall, and reminiscent of it is time to remember the name that sounds like a challenge. He welcomes Zion in the city and leads to the arena where everything decides. White hair Randall fell on his face, the look stubbornly forward. "Finally," he said, glad to see Cheyenne in the arena. He was waiting for him for a long time. His table was surrounded by soldiers, and Zion stood next to the hack. Zion stared in front of him, his face tense. He slowly built his chin and said that Random was too obedient, once this city considers his own. Just left as the village covered the attack. Zion's gaze slid along Radiel and guards. Randall shrugged with his hands and raised his eyes to Zion. He frowned, and annoyed in his voice. The events in the village could not be accidental. Randall accurately betrayed and helped the attackers. Rantel lifted his eyes to Zion, connected his palms and whispered that his people did not touch this village. In response, he suggested a magical device, promising to show something, and the Cheyenne with the hack still stood on the top of the arena. The palm lay on the face, the eyelids closed. Randall whispered that he is the hero of darkness, and it is this world, woven from shadows and hopes, deserves to die for him. The palm covers the face. In the eye, Randiel flares the radiance of the charming circle. From birth, he wore this power. He looked into the darkest corners for 20 years, and was convinced that he could not escape this world. Randall shed his fingers, looked into the sky and whispered, "Heroes seek strength only for themselves. They do not care about the world. Only Zion is different, such as he, not to find. But if strength had more, could change everything." Zion patiently listened, closed his eyes, and barely audibly breathing the air, clenched his vagina with one hand, and the other clasped the sword's arms. Squeezing his sword firmly in 2 hands, Zion cast his gaze forward, and escaped with his mouth promise. It is better to death than to serve the ideas of the god of death, as Randall does. The hands were laying down, his eyes flashed when he remembered as Zion led the sword cleverly. But Randall confidently said that the attack on 5 feelings against him is in vain. She rises gently, the sword in her hands shines, next to her, a hack. Randall, with his hair pulled into the tail, stood in a circle of servants, and said that there was no other salvation for Zion than to take it. The sword compresses with both hands. A glow is spilled around Zion. Magic seems to be flicker in the air. He says that there will be no Rendell, and Randall is only cold with his eyes and whispers. It is too predictable. Armed friends Randall died in front, whispering the spell. And suddenly they were wrapped up by the crazy gusts of wind that whistled with their ears and trembled by cloaks. On the faces of the subordinates Randall, which whispered the spell, something else appeared. Wings rushed from the blades, and already before the haze stood not people, and two dragons, one white, but the other dark. Randall jumped on the back of one dragon, the allies on the other, and in a moment both giant wings stuck in the sky. Haku and Shion were frozen with extended eyes, not believing that Randall called an ancient dragon. The air trembled when Randall flew on White Dragon. He opened his mouth, collecting brilliant energy, and Randall reached forward and proclaimed himself the strongest hero that was bearing the end of Zion. The white dragon glow broke out, gaping the fire on Zaya and the hawk. Zion clung to the soft wool of the hack, and together they immediately bounced back, and the stones under the whistle of the wings of the monster were pouring around the whistle. The white dragon under Randall glowed with the scales. He sharply pointed to the fugitives and questioned the tongues of the flame in 2 seconds. The dragon took a deep breath of magic, and Zion had already saddled. Under the roar of the wings of the black dragon, several figures in the cloaks were hiding on his back. The stream of fire escaped from the mouth. The arena began, and the shadows of the hacker and the Shion flashing in the flames. Randall frowned, looking down, and suddenly noticed how the Haka was shining through the flames and jumping out of the trap intact, with Zion on his back. The hook was finally shook, and asked Shion if everything was fine. Hardly visible tongues of the flames broke out of his ears and paws, and Zion was riding on a kak, a red fox, unbreaded with any fire. The sword trembled in the hands of the deer. The look slid behind the winged shadows on the side of the sky. The words of gratitude of the hack for the saved life of the verse flew from their mouths, and the black dragon, like a puppet, obeyed every Randall order. While the scion was holding his back, his fingers squeezed his fingers. Kaku caught his gaze. Anxiety was squeezed. If the owner of the dragons loses control over him, everything would disappear and melt. Scion raced on the hawk through the arena, when a giant black dragon hung over them. Randall expanded his eyes, spread his hands, and shouted to attack the dragon in 5 seconds. Several figures in the bizarre robes kept the sticks with alert, and one more spread hands, and together they whispered the spell. In the air around the dark dragon danced a strange, shimmering aura. Zion, sitting on the hide, lifted the sword in front of him. The blade flashed, and the whirlwind of magical wind with noise grabbed forward. Zion flew on the hawk. The rattles struck broke against the dark barrier around the dragon, and through the whistle of the wind he said that the protection was too strong. Zion jumped from Haruga, jumped into the portal, and found himself on the top of the arena between the pillars. While echoing in the air, the head was twisting. A witchcraft is needed to break through the barrier dragons. The sword of Zion twisted the powerful winds, and the dark dragon stirred the pillar of fire right in Zion. The flame roams everywhere. The zone had time to bounce. The hook with a fright searches for him among the heat and smoke. Randall, standing on the back of the dragon, looked at Zion and cast. In the dark he could not hide. The powder smelled around, and the zone on his knees squeezed the weapon. His heart pounded. Zion rose from his knees, and Randall, tearing his silence, shouted that the spell would not act forever. Forgiveness would not save. The dragon should attack again, this time, directing anger on the hacker. The dragon returned to the hack, rushing in the arena. The flames lost in his throat, the mouth opened, and the air faded from a powerful pillar of fire that had sniffed and flooded the arena. The hack was rushing through the arena. The flames hissed around. He threw into the air that fiery magic was not terrible, and Zion was tedious and long to cook. The fire escaped from the dragon's mouth, and Zion watched, falling asleep. He seemed suspicious of everything that Dragon and Randall did, because they both know Cax would not harm the flames. The fire of the flashing around the hack, he rushed up the arena, and suddenly, as if from a fog, Zion grew with a sword, from which the shiny crystals were slowly sprouting in the light. The hack's gaze frozen in the void. The heart did not understand why Shion was doing so. Before him, Zion's sword shone, and the fragile crystals suddenly flew into thousands of pieces. Shion stopped in front of the hack. The sword glowed in his hands. He warned. The fire of Valia, only distraction, the true threat, the icy magic of Randall, which was carried on a white dragon with a sword. Deeply biting into the hackier's wool, Zion suddenly felt his tension. The red fox was carefully cheered, that in this form it was particularly vulnerable to ice magic. If Randall's attack had succeeded, the ailment would be inevitable. The blade in Randall's hands was covered with an icy glow. In the air it smelled of cold, and he threw with anger. So simply, it will not end. Randall's sword flashed with ice when he rushed forward, and the dragon answered the heat. The fire was noisy. The boys rushed up, and Kaku, gleaming green, took the shape of a fox and wandered even faster. Randall and dragon attacks slid past the boys. Only whistling remained in the air. Those vigorously spoke about the enemy's approaches, and Cheyenne jumped out of the house into a soft, still alarming land. The black dragon poured all the flames near the smoke clubs, white, on the back of which was sitting Randall. He stared through the smoke, saying, "Wherever you hide, I see you still." The whole body is tense. Randall miraculously avoids the impact, looked forward in confusion, and sharp piles are clipped through the smoke. He immediately throws the team to raise protection without hesitation of a second. Many Zion, squeezing bows and arrows, dissolved in the whisper of the crowd. Zayomi loudly threw that Randall would not be able to repel all these attacks. When the hawk was in the shade, thick and cold, the clones began to click around, but he whispered, "Haka, running away, and I invent how to save us." Randall's eyes were surprised. Each of the clones is so similar to Zion himself. He ordered the dark dragon to collect magic, and he rushed to the ghostly figures with a deaf roar. The blinding outbreaks of magic sowed in front of the clones. The dragon threw them, and the clones were melting in the air, disappearing one by one. In the end, there was only one hack with Zion on the ground, and a dragon with a Randall was hanging above them. In the clouded silence, the sword shrugged in Randall. He cast a sharp look forward and said, "Zione, you do not deceive me with such cheap tricks." On the back of the hack, Zion tightened the magical claw of weapons from where the sparks poured, and said with a low voice, "I wait for Randall to destroy all my doubles." The breath was erased when Zion's words were hit Randalla. The guy kept a flickering lump of magic in his palm and looked up, as if catching something invisible in the air. Shurchite. Dozens of his clones appeared near Zion. He raised his hands. A magical lump broke out in his palms, and instead a bow was already shining in his hand, and he explains, when attacking on clones, he absorbed energy. The Shion raced on a Hako, felt the gust of the wind in the face, and a dark dragon flew towards. With the yarns of magic, the hand rose, the onion tensed, the arrow whistled up straight into the sky. At the same moment, the black dragon pierced dozens of magical arrows. They whistled both in the scales and the assistant Randall, leaving behind a burning trace. Randall's heart clapped horror. The black dragon hit the ground, and Zion had already made a new arrow, and the hail of shining charms flew simply on the white dragon and Randella. The arrows broke through the white skin of the dragon. He slept bitterly and fell, and Randall kept his sword in front of him, thinking, to get out of here almost no chance. The white dragon broke into a pity crying and, all in the wounds, thundered to the ground, lifting clouds of dust, and Randall, spread nearby, shouted hostly names through the hot breath of fear. The wind subsides when Randall turns to the side. There is a hack and Zion there. The sword of Zion shines, but Randall parts the blow, bounces, and at once Zion takes off from the hack's shoulder, rushes with the sword on Randall. Zion saddled Randall. Their swords faced a whistle. In his gaze, the challenge was burning. "Now no one will come between us," he voiced. And Randall sharply pushed his opponent, rose and capes about the surprisingly slow blows of Zion, predicting it in advance. A mysterious rune broke out in the eye, and a zone appears in front of him, and a stroke. Zion's blade broke out in front of Randall's eyes. He shouted with pain, kneeling, weapons slipped out of his hands. The fingers squeezed the eyelids, and Zion, leaning side by side, said that the force was coming from the eyes. Now there are none. And there will be no force. The blood flowed from Randall's face, the fingers trembled on the cheeks. Why could he not predict a blow? Zion stood in front of him, his mouth rises ironically. He was simply faster than the power of anticipation. The palms of their hands are squeezed, and dry scientific words swell past the ears. They are thrown away that he relied too much and did not notice a simple blow at all. The sword in the hands of Zion flashed a cold glow, and the voice sounded firmly, "The real power." It was on the edge of the blade, although Rand from these words remained a mystery. On his knees, clamping his face with his palm, randomly whispered hoarsely, which still remains a hero. Zion, removing the sword, through that he took only his eyesight. Now he should learn to live in the dark. and quietly moved the stairs up. Somewhere near the arena, just among the forest shadows, Xion and Haku argued about Randall. Even the wind did not trust him. And now the chains of the god of death were squeezed even stronger without washing away. Black emptiness, around only silence, and in memory. Randall sighs among the wreckage. The eyes were for him to all, and the heroic time was already gone like the last heat in ashes. He was barely heard by the Haku. Zion's strands fell on his cheeks. He held his palm on him, and his heart whispered, "Will remain here. He will go for his call," and Kaku was just smiling warmly. "It is fine." One finger of the peon rose up. The light paw of the hack touched the palm. Together they looked at the shiny stones and decided to collect them all to fill the world with good. In the guild, a girl was waiting for them. A slight cough, a surprise in his voice. "Do boys really leave today?" The hacker and Xion surprised the girl's reaction, and it was at this moment that a guild was quietly appeared because of her. A smile played on her lips. Lily jumped and hugged the guildmasters firmly, and near the girls whispered lively, discussing new ideas. Perhaps the boys would be lucky. Lily's crying face trembled. But here, she hid her hands behind her back and said confidently, "The boys will succeed." Then she gave a small purse of Zion, and he was surprised by his breath. Lily stretched a purse, smelled of fresh pastries inside. She smiled and assured that she baked these cookies on her own, and prayed for the health of the baby. Lily stretched the liver, the touches of the warm palm, a grateful look of Zion. In front of him, the girl caught his attention. They said that the girls would wait for boys to visit. The hawk stood near Zion. At the corner of the street, boys were killed. Suddenly a crowd gathered somewhere in front. The man raised his hand, the ring flashed on his index finger, and he said confidently that it was proof of his heroism. Zion and Haka's views rushed forward, an outbreak of the memory of Ragdala on his knees, and Zion said that the real heroes cannot be given, because enemies are chatting to take the strength when you are weak. The street dummy covered everything like a wave. Cian nodded the hack and moved silently. The boys talked quietly about caution. They can look after them, and the clouds floated over their heads. The noisy rotor woke up when Zion of the printer, his hands stretched down. The black shadow, a giant monkey, rushed forward. Zion grabbed her paw and gracefully threw the enemy over his shoulder, as if the wind was throwing leaves. On the ground, a monster with scattered paws and people were crossed. Zion comes out the winner, approaches the table, takes a basket. It has 30 poles, and the air smells of victory and old dust. The basket attracted the attention of the Xion. He sighed that he could not use healing with the hack. Zion waved the monster and the crowd, immediately dissolved in the air. The audience was numb from the defeat of the gorilla. On the table shimmed plates with food and a glass, rolled up with stones. Zion was tasted from the hawk, and in the hook of the crumbs, between the jokes mentioned the history of the city and as fishing grew here. A man with a towel on his hand approached the table, asked if everything tasted. Zion smiled, praised food, confessed that the local people were good, and mentally decided to stay in this city. A cheerful company was talking behind his back, chewing, laughing. The man said quietly, "Here people and the fools have always been friends, and lately something between them is broken. Friendship is thinner." Zion was in the dark, the air smelled of something bitter, and Kaku eaten calmly. The man said it was better not to appear on the streets of the city at night. Haku tasted food, chewing slowly. Zion caught a grateful look of the man and briefly thanked for the advice, and Haku sat next to him in lively crumbs, accelerating the comfort of the smell of spices. Behind the walls of the dining room, Xion carefully combed the hack, and friends recalled the streets without pits. It seemed strange that such deep clips could only leave strong magic in the city. The head of the hawk lay on the paws until Zion stroked him gently. Smog took the weapon, wrapped his cloak, and disappeared into the portal, thinking, what was going on in the city? It's time to find out the truth. From the foggy portal, Zion emerged, quietly stepping on the street, smelling of rawness and strange peace. Not quite dark, but no living soul. Suddenly, his name cut through the silence. In the fog, a street, several soldiers approached Zion and quietly warned, "It is impossible to go outside. Ogres are tearing on the streets." Zion asked how this happened. Men stood in front of Zion, the fog was pouring around. They mentioned in a half voice, "The diaper came to the warriors." Suddenly, a cry is heard behind, and Zion rotates sharply. On the ground, a girl sat in the dress, called for help, and a horned giant was hanging above her. He closed his claws, howled, and brought them right over her head. The next moment, Seor emerges from the portal in front of the girl. The sword meets the giant monster, and behind the back of Zion the girl trembles, curling into the ball with fear. The Zeon's sword reflected his paws. He called the soldiers to immediately take the girl to a safe place. The villagers, watching the monster, said with surprise that such a color of ogre was seized for the first time. A hot couple broke out of his nose. Silas then swung and threw a gift. The blade flashed, shaking the skin of the monster. It roared with pain, but within a moment the wound disappeared, leaving only a trace in the air. Zion was surprised to look at the plow, thinking how his wound could heal so quickly. The pad with his paws in his head hesitated and squeezed around him. Outbreaks of light snatched from his mouth. The sword of the deepest was shaking in his hands as he watched the ogre at incredible speed fused wounds. It frightened more than the stupidity of the enemy. Suddenly, fire, hot and crazy, broke out of the depths. The fiery ball fell. The earth trembled. Zion had time to bounce. His body frozen from the impact, he flew into the air, then rushed forward. It is necessary to cut off the horns of ogre, and he would weaken. The idea of the smog worked. The horns fell. A shrill scream flew from the spikes with thorns. He fell to the ground, grabbed his head and mutilated something, and Zion heard Karina and repeated the word, already grabbing his sword. But the girl in the dress was quietly pleased with him. The girl was firmly held by soldiers. She sobbed and begged not to push her with Ogrom, and Zion, frozen in the dream, stood with his sword raised. A thick fog was enlightened around. Zion returned to the girl without understanding her words. Ogro, holding his paw behind his head, swept past them, spreading the air with a cry. Ogre dissolved in the hole of the high wall, and Zion went to the girl in the dress, reached out and gently asked, "Tell me why you stopped him then?" The girl rushed into tears and whispered with fright. The monster called her name and she was her boyfriend. The soldier came closer and added, "In 2 months, this was a 10th case when the fences became Ogrims." Zion stared forward, his eyebrows shrugged. The fog came around and the dust was elaborated. The thought was throbbing in his head. The servants of the King of Demons are revived. It is necessary to find out what is happening in the city. The gaze slid from a soldier to a girl. He confidently said that the transformation could still be distracted. The girl trembled in tears, and the soldier was only a verse whisper that the king was looking for a way out, but the door is closed. The palms hide their faces, the voice trembles. If you touch her boyfriend, there will be no way back. And Zion only looks at a girl filled with a silent plea. The soldiers led the girl away, and one remained and whispered, "Outside the city, near the Whispering Lake, lives the goddess Flora. Perhaps she will help." The imagination was shadow of a girl with long hair. A strong warrior, skilled with a weapon. That's what they said about the deer. When the king called on to defend the city, he may hear the alarming hum and join, though he has only promised to think. In coniferous silence among the mountains, the boys stopped. Zion from a horse copied with a hack. Memories of ancient events raged, as if he were looking for a source of magic yesterday. A surprising tension was hanging around Zion and Haka. Zion quietly suggested that there was no demons here. But first we need to feel where he pulled the magic. Zion sprouted from the hack and, inhaling the humid air, whispered about the source of mania somewhere nearby. Ahead, near the dance, people were hoarse, as if fascinated. The boys came to the people. The girl turned and said that they came to the lake to hear their prayers. Zion was surprised because he had recently heard it from the soldier. Behind the crowd, Sion and Hakus raised their heads. Glowing magical circles emerged in the sky, and through the light flashed the girl's figure in a light dress. The girl spread her hands, floated in the air above the crowd, and seeing it, people fell, pleading with the goddess for salvation. Sion and Hako stared up, holding their breath. In the air, like a ghost, a girl with long hair and a glitter of decoration in the braid sailed. The boys were silently watching her, and the rest was already lying on the ground. She said that stubborn people did not like her. Zion thanked and opened her eyes in surprise. A strange light broke out under her breasts. The guy froze in her eyes wide, and she, sheltering her palm to her heart, gently said that she was Athena and wanted to talk to them. The glances crossed, and the hack said, "To look so closely, it is like challenging." The Zion shook his head out. He did nothing like that. Zion's gaze slid to the girl, the source of this magic. The Hyoch was surprised to glance at Sion and Athena, descending to the ground, saw a girl with a tightly braided braid. Zion stepped on the water, seeing the goddess for the first time. Athena spread over the ground, hugging her hands under her breasts, and quietly confessed. She was a fairy who was once a man. The guy stretched out the girl's palm and smiled noticeably, getting ready to tell about the purpose of his trip to the lake. But the girl interrupted. Guess we're looking for a magic crystal. The girl's palm slightly slipped on her pockets until the dark crystal was squeezed out of the fold. Zion, squeezing the edge of the cloak, admittedly confessed. It was this stone that he lost and seeks to return. Cold crystal light shrinks in the girl's palms. The look shines with determination. He will give the crystal of Zion, but only one condition. Zion catches each of her words without closing her eyes. On the rock, squeezing a cold stone in her palm, the girl whispered about the best friend, the hero of the war, and asked for Zion to show her the way to the lake. The Cheyenne with the hack listened silently, frozen nearby. The city streets are empty. The steps are deftly echoed between the houses. The hack is looking on all sides, and the Cheyenne has stopped in front. The boys are quietly talking. They finally got the cities where Athens's girlfriend lives. A droplets of sweat shone on the lobby of the Hawk. He rushed to the hack, confessing he traveled with this girl earlier. The Hook walked side by side, without pulling his eyes, and here suddenly, a cry of help cut out from behind the trees. On the ground lay a man, stood with fear, and shouted that a huge eagle was spreading in the sky. And just now his wings cut the air, rushing simply on defenseless people. Zion stood in a battle rack. A magical shield broke out in front of him. A heavy eagle hit him with a ringing claw, and Kaku, hiding behind Shion, had already tensed for a jerk. A brilliant magical shield behind his back. A hawk, and the boys froze when a stranger's male voice ordered to stop. The eagle did not overcome, and immediately the foreigner began to spell. The magic shield disappeared in the hands of Zion. When he, having frozen with surprise, met the girl's gaze, that a shadow appeared behind and enveloped the eagle with silver waves of water. The girl carefully came to the giant eagle, reached out and whispered, "No soul will hurt you, calm down. Let your heart be trembling with fear." The girl hugged the eagle head, and the wind played with her hair. She praised the obedient bird gently and winked. The eagle flew into the sky, and the girl came to the locals and explained, "In this bird there is no magic, just a heart is worried. We will calm down, and everything will fall into place." The smile was warm her face when she thanked the boys for his help. Her heart squeezed from anxiety, or had time to save all the inhabitants. The surprise flashed in her eyes. The Zone smiled gently, waved his hand and quit that she was not required. Suddenly, the girl covered her face with her hands and tears slipped on his cheeks. "Bring her hands up," she said through the sobbed. "In fact, Zion is alive." When the girl rushed to Zion, his embrace enveloped her firmly, and the tears flowed on his cheeks. She pressed harder, rejoicing that she finally found him. In tears, the girl hugged Zion firmly, rejoiced as if she had touched a miracle, because she was certain that he was no longer among the living. The driver gently took the girl by the shoulders. Their eyes met. In the gaze glittered joy. They were timidly recognized how happily seeing each other. The cheeks were covered with a blush. Both looked away and repeatedly repeated as the meeting. From the side of all this, silently watched the hack. The hawk was approaching. Zion introduced him to the girl, and she, composing his palms, said with his glowing eyes, "What an unexpected force next to the Zion. The hacker really strikes her." The smile illuminated the girl's face. She said that her name is Arya Miklit, and she was happy to get acquainted with Kaku. That verse smiled in response too, a glad meeting. Zion's hand reaches the area. The smell of spring herbs is mixed with anxiety. Zion gently reminds, the goddess Athena is already waiting for her near the source of flora, and R, without holding down the trend, agrees. Her fingers are gently moving away from a red hawk, removing her eyes. Hake has warned loudly to keep harder. And Arya was already hugging the state, whispering in the ear, an apology, laughing in her voice and a slight breath of fear. Zion cast his gaze on a hack and advised to slow down the step if his legs tremble, and Kaku answered a silent reproach. Zion never understands him. The source was germing nearby, the fairy hung in the air, and the earth trembled from jumping. Girls, laughed and happy, circling their hands, while the Cheyenne with the hack, blushed, watched silently. The look of the deer slid forward. The last time he saw Arya, and now she grew up and became an adult, and in his voice was a surprise. The fabulous creature looked at the Arya, sighed, closed her eyes, and whispered that she called her because of misery. Bestiars turned into owing, and the boys, holding their breath, did not look from the fairy. Arya mentioned holy water, one that can remove the curse and illness if the action is still fresh. In her imagination, a bottle full of radiant fluid was flickering in the darkness. The conversation of the girls was ringing the desire to save those who are in trouble. The fairy of the palms swept the Aryas and smiled, and Zaom stood quietly behind, like a shadow that was not scattered from the sun. In the eyes of Arius a flame caught fire. Only one person she bows, and the courage of the hero quietly took from Zion. As a child, Arya saw, between two swords with different coats of arms, the hands of two owners are shimpered, smelling iron and peace of the armistice in the air. In the memory of Arya, the image of a masquerade broke out. A magic ball flashed in the hand of a man. The ashes smelled around. A night of darkness was hidden around his eyes, which he was able to destroy the whole country alone, and she had to only accept it. In the memory of Arya, a reconciliation ceremony broke out. A three-headed dog suddenly grew up in the crowded hall, each mouth, a lap, flashing sharp teeth. The air filled the alarm and the smell of wet wool. Ari's baby hand trembled. She blinded the shield from the light and rushed to protect people from a monster who was hanging with three heads like a terrible shadow. Arya screamed, calling for help. The open pashes with fangs hanged over her. Despair forced her to put her hands trembling in front of her. Arya opened her eyes and saw the hero in the cloak, standing over the fallen three-headed monster, the winner of the darkness through the dusty air. The dark hero in the mask turned, went to little Arya, quietly dropped the mask, and whispered that everything was over. Now you can return to Mom. Arya greeted his gaze through silver tears. The palm of Zion lay on the soft hair of Arya, and in a moment they rushed together. Zion was 7 years older and loved the other, and Arya saw a girl with long hair inverted. Before the eyes of Arya, a picture broke out. Zion was standing around the coffin. She wanted to hug him, comfort it. But Zion turned away and left, leaving only bitterness in her heart. 5 years have passed since the day, and here, walking the street, Arya suddenly heard a man retell that Zion was killed. The picture was immediately mentioned. Zion stands among swords sticking out of the ground. The heart was crazy. Hands were convinced in the face, refused to believe in such a rumor. Like an icy wind passed through the chest of Ari. It is not believed that Zion was killed. She squeezes her arms on her chest and admits that she is happy to see him alive. Fairy's gaze gently touched Zion. The hack closed his eyes, and in his thoughts the stubborn devotion of Arya, which still loved Zion with all her heart. Behind the back of Arya, Zion froze, catching a gesture that interests it. Fari and Hako snapped, wondering how Zion could be so clumsy. The smiling fairy stretched out the lens, putting it in the palm of the deer, gently saying, "The promise is fulfilled. The crystal returns to you." There was a shimmering magic around the guy. In Zion, a spark was playing in his eyes. The crystal returned. It seems to be easier to breathe. The power was spilled inside, and there is already a lot of time to test this renewed magic. The city enveloped a thick fog. The boys stood on the street and whispered anxiously about the zombie powder. Arya sighed in doubt. She could not believe that magic was enough for the whole city. Having raised his finger, Zion explained that the villains spray the powder with the help of wind. You need to find a place where the saw is from, but first you need to deal with the ogre. Arya firmly squeezed a bottle of holy water. The earth stugged under the blows, and the boys, without bringing their eyes from yesterday's pupils, were hotly discussed. If they stand demons, what do they really want? Arya squeezed Zion, anxiously whispering about the demons that sowing hostility between people and the animal. And suddenly Kaku stopped. Just ahead of the cold earth was breathing hard on the cold earth. Ogre broke the meat of the animal, suddenly dropped his eye on humans. Zion put his eyebrows and noted that both horns were broken. Is this a giant yesterday? Arya's gaze slid along his label. It was not necessary to imagine how to restore the true look, and Zajan believed, and had already jumped out of the house, full of determination. By calling the Pusmania, Arya decided to raise the plow on the spot. The palm lay on the hand of the sword, and she said quietly to the hack, "Help me." The blade shrugged in the hand of the deepest. The steps became more confident, and its ghosts grew around from the dark earth, which dispersed the darkness with spells. Zion rushed forward with copies. He buried, roaring towards. He was hard on the ground, and the Zion with the shadows cleverly evaded. Here he was quietly roaring, and Zion was behind. Thick smoke escaped from his mouth. He roared so that the moon flew between the trees and rushed to Zion. Copies of Zion were erected magical shields, and the real Zion thought, this monster was not devoid of mind. The paws had already looked up, preparing for a blow. The charming light enveloped Aerie. She exclaimed that she was ready to attack. Zion nods to her, giving a sign to act, and there is a difficult thing to do next. The mouth of the Aries whispers with magical words, and around it shines a blue glow. Flowers are pumped out of the crystal, and the air is filled with fairy tale freshness. Magical circles were already glowing before the arias, from which the crystals flew from the hail, clamping the plow on the belt. He beat the crystals with fury, and Arya threw words that he did not escape. The hacker rushed forward, grabbed the plow on the paw. Zion reached out and touched the second paw with magical tentacles. The ogress was squeezed, the movement of none. Zion's ringing voice allowed Arya to attack. She rushed forward, struck the cucumber sharply, and his wild roar, full of pain. Arya sharply poured the contents of the bottle directly into the plow of the plow. He swallowed, shaking his head, grabbing his throat, and the boys, frozen, did not tear his eyes off the giant. The Vorog was grabbing his throat and roaring so that everything was shudder around, and Arya, with a bottle in trembling hands, whispered prayers, hoping for a miracle. The thick smoke stirred around the monster. Her eyes shot forward, and here through the gray child emerges a real beast. The boys are overwhelmed and smiled. The operation has succeeded. The girl in the dress extends the hands of the beast. The meeting fills their moment with joy, and the driver, the verse advised with the soldier, asks, if the ogress still appears, let them know immediately. Arya approached the hack. In her eyes, Plomin is a joyful fire. Beloved, finally together. The two of them shared the thoughts of love, laughing quietly as long as the light incense was circling around. In her hands the tail of the hawk trembled, and in the look of Arya grateful warmth. They silently whispered to each other with simple words of love. In the air smelled of tenderness and happiness. He was quietly coming. He raised his hand, apologized with a note of guilt for expectations, and suggested that Ari stay in a separate room. Arya looked at Zion, turned his back to him, and barely audible said that he did not mind staying with the boys. Zion nodded back. Zion's warm fingers slid along the head of Arya, and he whispered that she was a real miracle today. The cheeks of Arya flashed, and the hook only smiled nearby, silently shaking her happiness. In the room, the appliances swelled. At the table, the boys chewed and laughed, remembering how yesterday she walked the city without a mask, like a heroine, but no one recognized her. In the hands of Zion the fork shone. He asked not to be upset. Arya nodded. Haku put his paws on the table and sighed. In the city there is so lacking the hero of the weapon, but you will not find it here. Someone was sitting behind Zion's back. In memory, a man leaned to the ruler was emerging and his servants froze in silently. Zion's hand waved fatigue from his face. In his thoughts, anxiously heard, the kingdom on the border and the characters have not yet returned. Arya just nodded. I agree when a soldier approached them and turned to Zion. Two soldiers stood in front of Zion. Beards calmly announced that the king himself is calling Zion, and friends should go with him. The ringing steps subsided on the marble of the Rodansk castle. The boys were covered in front of the king and the queen, leaning in a respectful bow under the eyes of powerful eyes. It smelled of wax and roses. The king, sitting next to the queen, recounted the exploits of Zion. The one, barely climbing his knees, gently named the names of his friends. The Arya's hand lay on the chest until Zion told the king. And when she came, she was the hero of the water. The king shuddered and whispered that she was not a place here. Arya jumped up when she heard herself as a friend Zion. She happily agreed to accompany him and help the needy, and the king, covering his face with his palm, was slightly coughing. A white image appeared from under the brush of the king, saying that Zion was only a traveler with a strong beast nearby. From these words in the chest of Zion, raged. A man in white was frozen near the king. From him a quiet but relentless force, and Zion could not look away. Their eyes met, and the tension hung in the air. The king rose, reached forward and said, looking for a source of beacons. If the demons or magical creatures are guilty, they will be destroyed. Is Zion ready to become near? The Zion stood. In front of the boys, in the light of the torches, the king asked them for help. The boys were on their knees, holding their breath, caught every word. The Drian leaned on his knee, rose and said that a lot of time has passed since the clash with Ogram, and that is why the king secretly gathers the army. The man smiled in white and cast his gaze at the king. He answered him. The king clenched his fist, saying that the soldiers found a source of stench, but powerless, and Claire, the heroine of the weapon, had already returned from the hike. Claire approached the boys, reached out to the house, and said that he was glad to meet, and then looked at the hawk, smiled, and noted that he was glad to see a charming wolf, from which the hook was indignant. He was a fox, not a wolf. Claire was standing with Zion. He asked her who all people were. Claire only nodded. It was her team, 30 people. Men and women of all ages looked at the boys. The king has sought help to Zion. The enemy constantly sows enmity between people and beast-loved people, looking for discord, and his every word echoes the tension in the air. Near Shion, Arya and Hako felt his thirst. Shion gladly stated that he was ready to join their team right now, and the king responded with a warm smile and thanked his devotion. The map spread on the table. The king leaned over her. There were heroes around him. The room smelled of paper and wax. He announced that as they agreed, the operation would start this night. The Claire group, Zion and 30 elite fighters will participate. The helmet gleamed when the man reached out to Zion and introduced himself to the commander. The cold palm stuck his hand firmly, and at that moment, something unusual was erupted at the edge of the look. The commander squeezed Zion's hand more and more strongly. His fingers were seeding into the skin, and in response, Zion calmly lifted his eyebrows. Strange, this man, but made it clear, and a stranger's hand can meet true strength. Zion's warm smile barely melted as the man fell to the floor and shouted, and Zion, squeezing his hand, did not let him go for a moment. Along with the king, Claire faded when the king asked sharply about the fate of the boys. The commander of the soldiers, strangled by anxiety, shouted that Zion immediately released his hand. Zion's light smile, apologies, and the commander's hand remained in the air. Claire rushed to help you get up, approached the soldier, and asked if Zion was really so strong. The commander looked at Zion and Arya nearby, saying, "In this boy, a force that a simple mortal would not withstand." Claire was scratching, smiling, and saying it could be really interesting. With a look at the king, Claire said, "How someone will appear significant, the guards should report immediately." The king nodded, and Claire with her husband put his hand on his heart and froze as if they were sticking together with the air. They barely moved, Claire caught up with, smiling, and asked Sion to stay. He wanted to show him one special charming thing from his collection. Zion agreed. The arena met with roar and rattling cage, in which the winged monsters were rushed through the iron rods. Claire, holding a bow, said with a smile that it was time to check the charming weapons on these monsters. Zion's gaze sliding on the cage. The goblins fought there, and Claire had already pulled the bowstring, and raising her hand, gave a sign to release them. The boys were standing side by side without bringing their eyes off the beast. The grill clicked, and several goblins escaped in the air. Claire squeezed the bow, not for a moment, not taking a look away from the fast shadows that were towards. Goblins with sharp fangs on the claws rushed to Claire, roaring. Lunko echoed in the forest. She pulled the bowstring. 4 arrows flashed in her fingers, and magical rain flew to Goblin. Arrows, soaked in the magic, broke in a curved flight and were screwed into the body of Goblin one by one. Zion with Arya was monitored for miracle, and she whispered, "Arrows can really turn." Under the impact of magic arrows, the monster fall near Claire, which stands with a bow. Fingers tremble, and in the air still smells like fresh wood and hot metal. The king's blow knocked out of equilibrium. He grabbed his chest, bowed, but, lifting a magical bow to heaven, proclaimed that the power of these weapons would make all his enemies fall. In the views of the boys, fascination was fascinating. Claire, having released several arrows together, showed a miracle of magical weapons, and herself, with an ominous smile, cast her gaze on Zion. Claire approached Zion and said quietly that only one monster remained. He may want to deal with him. Zion frowned his eyebrows, thinking what Claire was calculated and agile. In the arena before Zion stood Claire with a magic bow in his hands. The flashing sun hangs over him, and Zion felt that Claire seeking not only to show weapons, but also to challenge his power. He shines too brightly for the shadow. Zion's eyelids are closed, and he quietly says that fighting with a stranger is a hassle. Claire is barely smiling, grateful for understanding, and Zion slowly passes by, leaving a light rustle of steps. Arya with the hack is encouraged by Zioni in their voices, faith and warmth. Zion raises his hand, thanks to his friends, and in the meantime in the cold air above the iron cage roaring a monster, and Zion looks up. The monster rushed forward, lifting the dust. Zion did not move, whispering mysterious words. The brilliant tentacles crawled out of the earth, grabbing the winged monster just in the air. Claire lifted her eyes. The heart scored anxiously. Even under the sun, Zion wove dark magic into space. The tentacles were grabbed by the monster. It was quenching, and at once one of them tore his head. The body of the monster near the Zion, whose arm frozen in the air, the body fell near the Claire. Her fingers squeezed a magical bow. Along with Claire on the grass lay the head of the monster, and she was passionate about saying that Zion was so skillful that it would soon exceed the hero of the darkness of Axel. Zion only advised to go, and Claire waved to friends. Arya and Haka approached Zio. Arya praised Claire. Accurate, strong, well-owned. The hawks of the Scion looked around and whispered in whispers. Why did Claire take the 30th detachment? There were many riders in front of the high gate. Claire, raising her voice, promised to stop the source of miasms and restore the city of the city. The weapon rose into the air. The noise of joy rolled. On the way, under the shimmering morning light, the boys walked the chain. Zion was riding on the hook. Behind him silently Arya's and Claire. And in the air the words about the ruins ahead of the air were anxiously moving. There could chat the enemy. Claire kept the guides firmly, smiling and joked that there seems to be no hero here, and it was quite pleasing. Arya, drawing nearby, only quit. Only time she will tell if we are fortunate. Claire's gaze slid along Arya's. His hand touched his chest, and with a smile he said that Arya was beautiful and wanted to see her in her team. But Ar quietly refused without lowering her eyes. The gaze of Ar was pouring into the sky. The cheeks were burning with fire. In her thoughts already lived a dark-haired, beautiful, incredibly strong guy, and she confessed about it. The smile of Arya shone down when she looked at Claire and said she loves this man. The boys shifted their eyes. Yong from the hacker carefully approached the Arya, asking to stop. The surprise broke out in her eyes, and Claire, smiling nervously, said, "The one you love is a truly happy person." The hoof was stunned. The rider flew directly and shouted about the purple plowing just ahead, and the driver on the hawk, strenuously staring and drinking every word of this tumultuous message. Claire noticed that the skin color was to be a former animal. Arya was worried, and Zion carefully remembered holy water capable of regaining Ogru's true appearance. Claire, showing her hand to the side, screamed that the detachment was in a row. The Ogre was already pushing on them, and near her stood Arya and Zajan, holding up fixed as before the storm. 9 giant purple binders blocked the path of the detachment. Smoke was bubbling from the horned heads, and Claire felt the panic squeezing breasts and buzzing in his ears. The views of the boys slid forward. The holy water seems to be enough for everyone, but it will be difficult to cure everyone. Claire quietly confessed that this decision was difficult, but monsters cannot be left alive. In a moment, Ogre jumped and hardly thundered next to the ranks of soldiers, angrily growl. The confused warriors packed and looked around, fear knocked on their chest. For a moment, the hawk flicked, the body stirred the green fire, and the lining silhouette rushes on the offensive, lightly rolls the war on the ground, leaving behind the aroma of the forest and the predatory rustle. The sharp wind slammed, they hid the muzzles under the paws, and Claire sharply rushed to give orders and, having fallen, stare in the distance. Claire approached Qian and noted that the hack was doing great. Qian nodded with a smile. He has a full strength in the hack, and he is not inferior to me nor Arya. In the eyes, Claire broke out as a surprise when Zion was quietly saying, "It was time to give them act on their own." The girl scolded and stared at him, as if trying to understand his heart. Looking at the angry giants, Claire whispered, "How will Zion handle this terrible crowd himself?" In Zion's eyes, he reflected an alarming look. He pleaded with Claire to trust them. Arya came closer and, touching her hands, also asked for a confidence that Claire was only surprised to be silent, staring at Arya. Looking at Zion, he nodded. The boys are given exactly 5 minutes, and when time meets, he will order to destroy the monsters. Claire ordered the riders to stop the pressure, receiving a short, grateful word from Zion. Arya was already standing behind Zion's back, ready to pick up, and caught every movement in the alarming silence. Around, the predatory views of the monsters. One mistake is all, but the plan of rescue of the animal has already grown in their thoughts. The icy view of the statement slid to Arya. She had to shake as much bake as possible, and he would stop their tops with the tentacles. Arya nodded. Claire threw a team of soldiers to become a wall between them and angry monsters. The air broke the roar of trolls. The eyes flashed with a predatory fire. Their heavy legs thundered on the ground, preparing for a rapid attack. The earth shuddered when the OGR fell next to Zion and Arya. The hawk rushed forward, knocked the giant off his feet, and R praised the brave beast. The Arya raised their hands, and the icy shells crawled up to the torso. The cold was piercing. From the mouth of the soldiers, the white steam was knocked down. The air crawled into the bones. Zion's palm rushed forward. A magical aura was danced around. The space was torn by dark tentacles. At last, 5 Ortera was stuck, and Zion declared loudly about victory over them. The holy water trembles in the palms of Arya, while Claire, jumping from the horse, joins it. Carefully watered the bound breeches, splashes ring in silence. The light wind of the wings. Arya said that it was time to become themselves again, and Zion and Claire were holding their breath, watching everything carefully. Eyes were lit, everyone burned so loudly that the air was tied. Arya confusedly followed them, not understanding why they did not return their usual face. Haru, hoping in his voice, asked whether he had not had long had passed. Zion squeezed the jaw. The heart was pounding. These ogres, apparently, are managed by someone. The views crossed between the guy and the ograms. The guilty demons rattled, and Claire grabbed the second sword, burst into the light, and strictly ordered the soldiers to destroy the warriors. Soldiers with weapons moved forward, attacking the tight giants, and Claire watched closely every movement, feeling the voltage of air and barely audible steel bell. The lightning attack, and the heads of the warriors rolled on the ground. The rest fell under the pressure of the soldiers, and the Zion, full of indignation, monitored the rigid massacre. Claire waved his sword sideways, calling the soldier to get a warrior. His cry heard, like a thunder, between the roar of the battle. Zion's hand pulled his shoulder while he stopped the soldiers and Claire. Claire murmured with doubt that Zion was rely on holy water, which did not help last time, and their views met, like sparks in the dark. Claire turned, nodded to the Zon in agreement, and heard thanks. Arya was saying again, she helped her near the hack, and a cold white hoarfrost was already lying on the skin of the latter. Zion with Claire rushed to the warriors, stretched them holy water, but she did not act. The soldiers rushed to the attack, and Claire only clenched her lips and froze with horror, watching a bloody sight. In the air, it smelled of metal when Claire stopped in front of Ogrim, and he, squeezing the swords, was already going to blow, and Zion restrained him and asked him to wait a little. Having spread his hands, Zion requires that the Orto is named. He, holding his head hard, squeezed, "Gay." Zion's voice made, "Gay, come back to yourself. You are a man." The fire broke out in the eyes of the plow. A huge giant grabbed his head, and Zion exclaimed that they were waiting for him. "Come back." And slowly there was a miracle. The face of the monster changed just in the eyes. Suddenly, a native appeared on the way. Clutching his hands in the temple, he called his name deftly, and Claire, froze with surprise, could not believe. All this looked incredible. The viewer called his name until he felt the warm embrace of Zion. Arya, Hako, soldiers and Claire exploded, celebrating his victory. Arya and Gary ran to Cheyenne, and she whispered the words of gratitude for the victory. And Zajan said with warmth that his victory is the power of support of friends, and let at least one animal received from holy water. Claire Lightsteps came to life. She reported that the soldiers would spend Guy in the city, they say. The boys could not worry, and had another serious conversation for them. Claire insisted. Because of the pranks of Zion, everything is threatened. It is no longer possible. Next to her, near the shimmering fire of the torch, sat the soldier, and the Arya with the hack hurried to justify Zion. Zion appeared in front of the boys, raised his hand, thanked for his support, and assured, "From now on, the care is extra." Then he knew in front of Claire and quietly apologized for his behavior. Claire's smile was warm. He silently asked Zion to get up, closed his eyes, and in the silence surrounded a strange energy, mentioned former times, so Claire offered to move further, turned, went. Once a noisy rotor met only the ruins. The wind wore dust, pulling the shadows in the fire. Claire in the saddle, Arya nearby, and he told how they were taken here in ancient times. The Arya shakes from fear. Claire had been bought by spooky city stories, and Arya hugged herself and quietly confessed that she did not like her. Shion and Haka with soft smiles began to calm her down. The commander stands before Claire. His gaze sharp, the fire of the torch is passionate about, and he quietly says, at the entrance to the ruins he noticed someone's figure. He spoke about a giant monster with a frantic mana at the entrance, And Claire, holding his hand at the horse, heard, "You need to find the leakage of this magic." Zion nodded Claire and promised to deal with the monster himself. And Claire jumped out of his horse. The air was swollen with tension. Now they are able to prove them. She smiled and stared forward. A giant monster was mounted from the ruins. Instead of his head a skull, the whole body is covered with heavy armor. A giant sword shines in his paws. The Klarov team was worried, but he himself accurately grabbed both swords. Under the gusts of the wind, the cloak of Claire climbed, and a smile appeared on their lips. Now everyone would see what they still did not know. The decisive look Claire was confidently looking forward. Grabbing the swords, Claire rushed to the monster. A memory sounded in his head, as she once took the childhood of a friend. And at that moment Claire sustainedly swore to pay off. The blade shone past. He cleverly evaded. Claire cuts the monster bib. The blades leave deep cuts. The earth gives in the knees. There are already fighters of the detachment, and a short order breaks out. Prepare for battle. 3. And a few soldiers immediately began to create a spell. And Claire, clamping a strong, charming staff, cut his sword in half. Claire rejected the weapon and began to count. 7. Archers. 2. Hobbies. The rays shook the arrows on the muzzle of the monster. The iron chains were tightened on his hands. In the hands of Claire, a heavy, sharp weapon was born. She rushed to the attack. Claire shouted that the monster had come to an end, and in a moment her blade pierced the body of the enemy. She easily landed behind the back of the monster. The monster has groaned so loudly that the earth shuddered. His head had almost disappeared, and then it fell, lifting a cloud of dust. Claire looked around and said with a smile that it was too much. Zion and Kat came to Claire. The words of praise were ringing in the air, and Claire, smiling, confessed. Compliments from the harvest, like the warmth of the sun through the morning fog. Zion explained. The numbers were a signal to the attack, and Claire felt perfectly. Claire approached the soldier, cautiously handed him a weapon, and said with a smile. He had so much that they should be brought into the world. In the cart nearby there are another sharp iron. I thank you for the advice, mentally addressed Zion to Claire, watching how he quickly gave the instructions to his subordinates. He was in front of him, a real hero, confident and tireless. Due to the ruins of the city hidden in a thick fog, the boys walked next to the soldiers, inhaling a barely catchy, bitter taste. A strange mull crawled around, and the conversations were spinning around the source of miasms. The soldiers stepped to the big puddle of a strange substance, froze for a moment, breathed the alarming air, and the fear of cold ran on their back, not letting the step forward. Among the city was a strange figure made up of human bodies. It was squeezed by black hooks, which was noisily circling in the heavy air. The horror has spacked in the voice of Zion. He whispered that it was exactly the pranks of the demons, and for several days it has passed since the death of these people. Arya turned away, closed her eyes and whispered, So it is impossible with the dead. In front of the player of the wall of armed soldiers, behind the steps, he calls for not everyone to panic. This is demonic provocation, and on the face, Claire shines cold sweat. Zion felt 4 sources of magic in front of him and began to spell when the thick fog covered the air. The sweat spoke on his forehead, and Claire turned to the soldiers sharply. They needed to go immediately. Arya approached Zion, put a warm palm on his back, and said quietly that revenge to the monsters for the death of these people would be inevitable. Zion, wrinkling his eyebrows, nodded back. The fog was cluttered around. The air trembled. The boys stopped and whispered that they found the source of the stench. Just before them sat a frog ogre with an open mouth, from which a thick hot steam escaped. In the eyes of the boys, a disgusting monster frozen, and in the air the words were already swelling. They say, once such a member of the intestines all the continent. In the midst of the conversation, someone grunted roughly. It was tired of waiting for the heroes. And behind the boys in the sky 4 monsters hung. The wings are trembling. The clouds move from their summer. 3 demons were hanged in the air. The wings were rustled, with a rhythmic sound, and a cold smell poured out of the pash open to all. Magic pulled them down 10 stronger than human. Claire lifted her gaze. The demons lounged in the air, whispering with wheezing voices that they were reported. The characters went to the rotor. Claire quit with a squeezed breath. Do you turn people into a monster? In response, she was hoarse. It was only warming up. Now it was time to declare myself. Arngite, hairy, Tarb, with thick eyebrows. Alton, small and smart. All three, different as night and day, are brothers whose names sounded in every rustic forest. The views crossed around the frog. Now we need to overcome the frog, and in the meantime, the soldiers will rush on the demons. A moment, and the frog jumped straight to people. They crumbled, and the conductor was laughing and loudly ordered the frog to attack. The fire broke up in the frog's mouth, and it released a flame. But the boys reliably covered Haru. Such a weak element for him is nothing more than a spark. In response, the sorcerer sharply waved his hand and directed the spell against the frog. Peru promised to deal with the frog himself. Zion only nodded as a sign of consent, and Claire, squeezing in his hands onions, rushed to the arches of arrows into the sky on the winged monsters. The arrow Claire broke the air, forcing the monster to shudder. They hung, trembling, and hid in an invisible, shimmering shield. Arrows from Claire and archers whistled with air, damp from dew. Nadia glowed in the chest. About the walls of the monster will fall, a little more, and the path will break through fear. The look of Arshita slid on Claire. She was really strong, he confessed, but without his arrows he is nothing, and immediately, strictly, says to his brother Tarbu to go on the offensive. Magical circles broke out on the palms of Tarb, and he immediately released the power on the shooters. The wind broke, and the blinding rays cut the air, knocking down enemies from their feet. The bow trembled in the palms of Claire, and the wind whistled in his ears so loud that it seemed impossible to shoot. The monsters laughed when Tarb produced bright magical circles, pouring charm, and people were desperately hiding from the ominous wave, which rolled around. When the call to the tornado sounded, the magical energy circled around the guy in the air, and here around the predatory bursting whistles, rustling with wind and zippers. The look of the Zeon became serious. He lifted his weapon, and around him was the magic around him, a watchful breath, lightning in his fingers. The storm was slowly scattering. The demons of the demons expanded with surprise when Zion's magic flashed and a sword shone in his hand. He smiled and threw. Now, unfortunately for you, I also drive the wind. Zion clenched the sword in two palms, and the wind was torn into his face. Tar spent and exclaimed that no magic Zion was compared to his own. At the same moment, the Tarb sowed several crystals. Blood splashed from her mouth, and Arya, creating spells, whispered. The demon did not have to shoot the barrier while struck. Arya reached out and threw her hand. It is enough to consider people weak. Tarb pressed his palm into the crystal. He had anger in his eyes. The guy stood still. His gaze pierced the monsters. The monsters were hung in the air. Tarp pressed his shoulder, and Grove, casting his gaze down, confessed. He did not expect to meet people stronger than Lear himself. Squeezed teeth, heavy breathing. Argit grunted that the hero's beliefs should be honored, and Zion was confused with his eyes, not realizing whom it was talking about. The call suddenly appeared in the hands of Argenti. He angrily glanced at him, lifted high up, and reported that now everyone would plunge into a magical tune. The bell in the hands of Argenti was dorming, and he stretched forward. The jit rolled the field, touching the ear sections of each guy. The bell echoed in the air until the earth trembled. Arya, Claire, and soldiers, twisting in pain, grabbed their heads and covered their ears tightly, because the sharp sound pierced everything around. The cold bell lay in the palms of Argita, and he said, "This sound affects the human mind." Zion, having fallen, asked who from the chatter sold them such a thing. But the Argit only shook their heads, and already Zion squeezes the sword, near the Aureus, breathes nearby. The ominous smile of the guide has sparkled in the darkness. Everything will be much more difficult than it seems. Time is over. Zion lifted his eyes in surprise, not understanding what the trap is. Zion and Arya's views slid the field involuntarily. The soldiers suddenly rushed. Their eyes wandered in the fog until they broke off each other in a feverish fight. The backs were pressed to each other. The driver and the Arya felt the bitter smell of despair. The monsters fascinated the soldiers with the bell, and now the soldiers rushed at them, and Claire tore with anger to the dearest. Zion reflected the blows of Claire and asked himself whether there was magic at all that would dispel this dark cloud. Arya kept the last bottle of holy water, and the bell could subside it at any moment. The Arya's hand trembles in the air. Magic comes to life. The ice flows shine on the swords of Claire. Zion and Claire stand nearby. Suddenly Claire slides and knocks down, the sword ringing on the ground. Claire lay motionless like an icy statue, every muscle tight by the charms of Arya, and swords roared around in cries. The boys whispered. Arya spent the last holy water on Claire. We need to invent how to save others. The look is serious in front of you, and the statement creates a spell. Black wings grow out of the shoulders, and dark feathers were circling in the air, like ashes. In the air, Zion, the sword, was in his hand. The voice was solemn. From now on, the monster would no longer play someone else's lives. Argot lifted his sword, cast his eyes on the brothers from above. Alon slightly smiled, and Tarb was scared to the ground looking at Zion. Dark shadows were sliding in front of Zion. Eyebrows came together, anger broke out in his eyes. He looked at the monsters and coldly proclaimed that their days would soon come. When the Arya reached out, magical circles shone in the air, and crystals that clapped the soldiers were escaping from them. They tried to break the ice, which even breathed the cold. Ari turned and said that now the soldiers would not move out of place for a long time. The gaze slid forward. Until Zhang breaks the bell of the demon, the soldiers will continue to throw at each other. The fire of the great frog cast Kak, but he raised his hands. The spell, reflecting the flow of flames, promised no spark would touch his friends, and the flames, burning in the air, returned to the frog itself. The vigilant look of the hacker slid on the boys. He suggested that the baby leave the baby on him, and the dead man to break the bell. Arya glanced at her friends. Zion whispered angrily into space. Demons will pay for every evil. The black wings of Zion with lightning starred into the sky, and weapons trembled in their hands. Tarb shouted scared. This time, Zone really flies on them. Through the air, Zion rushed. The black wings trembled, and Elon said, "Darkness in it, because his wings are night." Tar, shouting, reached out, twisting whispers around him for a blow. Zion's hand flew up, the fingers touched the silver sphere, and all the strokes of the Tarba bounced, as if pushing on the invisible wall. Tarb frowned, not understanding where Zion was such magic, and Zion was flying forward with his sword, and a radiant bullet. The wind rushed when Zion began to whisper a terrible spell and waved his sword. Like lightning, his blows fell on Tarb. All the strokes of Zion hit the Tarb. The body was scattered in pieces. Fresh blood flowed to the ground, and Argot shouted with horror the name of his brother, catching his cry in thick air. Black, up Zion was rapidly chasing a one-sided Alton, and he smiled and challenged. Let them know whose magic was stronger. His hands out, and a magic ball shone between his palms. Alton's view alone, vigilant and sharp, and already in the air, a dark mana closed, escaping from his sphere just towards Zion, hanging in the air, feeling the magic cut silence. Inside the black sphere, the bus is lost in the dark, and Alton informs with a smile that every feeling will be closed. There is no way out, and there will be strange sounds around, as if the darkness whispers, "Moment." Zion's hand sharply departs. The magic ball immediately melts in the air, and already in the fingers the sword shines. Altan looks confusedly, not believing how Zion escaped. In the air, Zhang hangs over the demons, loudly challenged the darkness. Alton's witchcraft is too weak. His magic circles around, easily defeating someone else's darkness. The driver reached forward. The air rushed from the spell, and flexible tentacles leaked from the dark holes. Alaton lifted a shield, but they roared the protection and pierced his body. Argus frozen while the Dryon was hanging in the air, and Alton flew down. The frightened Argus murmured that the driver is only a man. But the Zion calmly answered, "It doesn't matter." Argot was spreading in the air above Zion, promising to destroy the rotor. After that, he would become one of 10 demonic generals. In response, Zion calmly said that at the entrance to the city, the boys saw the mountains of the dead. Zion was looking for the truth. All these people are victims of demonic brothers? Argot stretched his mouth in a bad smile and nodded, and Zion glazily glanced at him. Argoth glanced at Zion and demanded, "Let him confess where he came from such power. Did not Asa take away from the hero?" In response, Zion plunged into silence. The wings of the daisy unfolded, the sword shied in his hand, and he looked at the Argota and said, "Why learn magic in acts when he is an act? My real name is Zayan Ask." Argot asked if Zion was not really joking. In response, Zion was cold that Argot was not worthy to stand instead of the darkness, which he destroyed 2 months ago. And the anger of Argota flashed. He rushed. The elongated hand of the dearest was frozen in the air. The dark magic twisted in the front, growing into several black spheres. One he grabbed his fingers, and she flicked like a night lightning. The fire was flickering in front, and Zion whispered, which should turn the dark balls that absorbed the flames, their owner. The next moment he began to spell. The Argota's extended hand flicker in the air. The spell erupts from his mouth. and a rounded magical shield shines in front of him. The voice becomes rigid. Be you a hero or anyone, a person does not compare with Argat. The Arcada's palms stretch up, a shimmering ball flashes between the fingers, and his voice sounds through the trembling air. Let Zion run away until it's not too late. An evil smile appears on Argus's face. He whispers that his most powerful magic has to comb his enemies. Light flashes above him, and Zion hangs nearby in the air, watching every Argus movement. In the air, the suspended Zion calmly said that it would not be easy to absorb orange magic. Argat looked at the enemy's cold bloodedness in surprise and threw his magical stream into him. A bright outbreak. Argatov attack hit Zion, his silhouette struck in a dazzling light. Argat looked at a sight, angry. Even AKS would not stand this magic, and you could. The winged Argus unfolded his wings. A flame and smoke were stuck in front of him, the fire of a hot thorns, and he exclaimed with rage. At least as the hero of darkness tried, there would be no mention after his strength from Zion. The flames scatter, and before the gate grows Zion, in a crow armor, with a burning sword and widely spread out black wings. Seeing a dark shell on the driver, the Argat was raised by fear, and the driver stood confidently over him and explained that it was a black protective armor, created in a special way. Fireballs break from the hands of Argus, a crazy roar and ashes in the air, and each blow breaks into Zion's armor. "Don't come," shouts Argus and calls himself a real monster. A moment before the Xeon, a burning sword flashes. He pierces us through, and behind his back widespread like a heavenly thunderstorm wings. Blood squeezes the lips of Argita after a stroke of Zion. Under the harsh glance of Zion he ears that he must live, because he has not yet poured his path with another's blood, and Zion himself squeezes the sword firmly, preparing a new spell. The black armor rings in the Zeo, the fiery sword of the air. It flies to the Argat, rises and cuts the enemy in half, a striking blow. Sparks will pour in darkness. Black pads shine in Zion. He flies up with the sword, and Arcati's body falls into the flames. The fire tickles the skin, and only the ashes and a thick smell of smoke remain. In the eyes of Arya reflected the purple sight of the wings of Zion, which was spreading in the sky. She sat down near Claire and said with relief, "With demons is over. Now you can breathe calmly." In front of a burning frog, Haku barely held back joy. Now no one is in danger to anyone. Arya ran up, praised him enthusiastically, made Zion together, and Zion watched in silence. The soldiers supported each other. Claire silently plunged into the darkness of his own thoughts, suddenly confessed. The monsters broke him, he embarrassed, but carefully persuaded not to blame himself because friends are nearby and all is well. The team ran to Claire, exploded with applause. The joy was intertwined in strong arms of the boys. Shion and Hako poured praise to each other, and Zion lightly touched his shoulder and noticed fatigue in his gaze. Claire went closer to Zion, thanked for the salvation, but his eyes fell. After he saw the fight with the demons, he suddenly doubted himself, and Zion only caught the content of these words with confusion. The senses are sharpened. Claire leans to the very face of the deer, and he notices. She wants to ask something. A restless question flashes in her eyes. Claire, leaning towards the very ear of the deer, whispering whether he was a hero with an axe. The Zion spread his hands, and avoiding his eyes, quietly denied until Claire was looking out of his eyes. Claire smiled and silently made it clear. Everything went into place. The conversation ended. The guys shook their hands firmly, and the hook with the aria caught every movement. Zion smiled, staring at the distance. There were Shion, Arya, and Hacha in front of the king. The king extended his palm forward, nodded them, and praised the lightness of the gate, and the applause and a joyful noise were moved around. Claire trembled next to the king, and Zion was near the Arya. The guy cook said that everyone was ready to share the award evenly, because today they only saved their lives. Having caught the king with a vigilant look, Zion raised his hand with a small bag. They say the food was tired, so the stores were able. Now there will be no darkness with transportation and storage. The king only nodded as a sign of consent. Leaving the hall where the king was sitting with the queen, the boys stepped down the hall but suddenly stopped. Behind the deftly slammed, someone dumped Zion. The slight aroma of perfumes and a soft smile. Claire joined the boys, saying that he decided to go with them because they were already working hard to leave the city. The warm palm of Claire with a bag reached for a Shion. In it dagger, the blades of which are generously lubricated with insect poison. They will help to cope with the monsters. Zion was silently clamping the bag and listening carefully. The views crossed, Claire wished the boys a good road. With a warm hope for a score meeting, Zion also hoped for a new moment together. The shake of your hands, a short goodbye, and a moment flew the moon. Kaku waved his tail and quietly mud. The boys stepped the bridge. Sion squeezed a small bag in his palms, licked Kaku, and Arya, closing his eyes, told something. Everyone was happy to discuss the award. Froze the Zion, noting in front of the rescued Beastra man. He bowed his head, lowering his soft ears and paws, and quietly, through sadness, confessed. He was lucky to survive and heal. A man with his ears and paws hugged the girl, thanked the boys for salvation. Zion smiled warmly in response, and the boys felt the gaze of the conductor with wool on their hands. Confidently steering, Hakak brought the boys far beyond the city to the windy hill, where he said, "Zion is a hero who inspires people for exploits." Arya was catching naughty hair, and Zion looked down in surprise. She calmly met his confusion after Kaki's words. Zion covered his face with his hand, and finally offered to decide where to move on, and Kaki stuck quietly like a shadow behind his back. The sun swells in the wind. The hook asks Arya whether she wants to go together to look for magical crystals of Zion. Arya subsides for a moment, puts his palm to the heart, and looks forward. Hands crossed on the chest, the voice of the quiet. The heroes have no right to go where he pleases. Zajan supported her choice, but Arya was waiting for another answer, and he said, "There is no more true friend in the world than she." The cheeks of Arya had a blush. His gaze slid on the deer, as if asking, he may be waiting for her. The Zion answered openly, and Arya, closing his eyes, was even more sore. Arya went a few steps from Zion, whispered that he must first return to the capital, and then leave the guys. Zion asked if Arya really wanted to leave his hero's work, and Arya nodded confidently. They say, there was already a candidate for replacement. Everyone looked at her in amazement. Arya just smiled and stood near the hack. A warm smile bloomed on Irina's face. To save friends nearby than to sacrifice for thousands. Science lightly laid his palm on her head, met her gaze and thanked. Arya was blushed and smiled timidly. The Zion from the hack was moved to one side, the Aryas to the opposite. The road smelled of dust, sang rye blue grasses, and farewell wishes were leaning behind their shoulders, dissolving in the morning air. Near the Arya River jumped on slippery stones. She sang joy in her chest. Finally found the goal, to go with the deer on the journey, and the cry of happiness broke from her mouth. The soft shore under your feet, breathing becomes deeper. And Arya whispers mentally, which is now won, so it must gather will and stand it, as if it would not shake inside. The sudden noise of the steps. Arya looked around. Someone was racing to her through the grass. The heart in the chest froze. The hawk stopped side by side and, grabbing his breath, asked where she went alone. Arya nodded with a smile that stood opposite. She was traveling to the kingdom of Valency. In response, Hackett also said that their path was leading there. Arias's eyes were a slight joy. The hook's gaze slid to Shion, and in a moment Shion jumped out of the hook, stood on one knee. In front of him, in a breath of surprise, froze Arya. Having reached out, Zeon suggested that Arya join. There was a free place in the carriage, and he was gently invited to move with them together. The gentle smile of Zeon greeted the look of Arya, who thanked and nodded, accepting his offer, and then carefully put his warm palm on his hand. Zion and Arya were written by a hack. Arya barely restrained laughter, but did not resist, and through the cheerful murmur confessed that the boys played the scene just great. The clumsily rubbing the nape of the neck, Zion confessed that this hake persisted him. The hook cast a look at him, and Arya jarled and barely whispered. The boys would go with her. Both, Zion and Haka, lifted his thumbs up, and the Shion suggested Arya's to hold on to him on the road. Arya snoozed Zion's cloak. The wind picked up her hair and carried a light dance. The solar field of the flowers with a carpet was under the hooves of the hack. Zion was confident. Arya grabbed his cloak. His cheeks were burning, and a timid smile appeared on his mouth. The mountains were rising in front. When the rocks burn the souls, Arya recalls, without royal permission, the hero does not become. The hacker throws his eye to the tops and says, the path is still along, but it is necessary to spend the night in the near village. Shion nodded, accepting the offering of the hack. The boys moved on, and Arya touched the breast and, squeezing her fingers, confessed, she has long dreamed of washing clothes. Zion glanced quietly at the Arya and noted that her clothes have almost no smell, and the hook was indignant. They were not told to girls. The road was brought to a pond where the transparent water shone under the sun. Arya breathed clean air, plunged her palm into the cool. No monster, only quiet smooth, peace and murmur. The deer clothing fell to the ground one by one when he asked the Arya to put them next. Seeing him naked, the girl blushed, and holding her breath, turned away, hiding her gaze. The sadness of Era was growing while Zajan, laughing, dropped his clothes and rushed into the water, and the hack hurried after him, overflowing with laughter and exclamation that needed to be washed. Arya watched them empty in water, sparkles, laughing, and then exhales hard and carefully picking up Zion's things from wet grass. Arya urged the boys not to approach, because she was washed in another place, and those, diving into cool water, laughed and quit. We understood everything. Water splashes at the hands of Arya, clothing flickens in soap foam, and here it hangs it on stretched ropes, so that in the wind and sun the fabric dries faster. Arya turned into silver water, breathed a coolness thoughtfully, the cheeks flashed, and, stepping ashore, quietly confessed that she also decided to afford fear. Pushes off the shore, jumps into the water, splash, splashes, laughter. She emerges with wet hair and joyful words. Water gives her a pure pleasure. Wet from the pool, the boys moved with towels, and Zion, taking his eyes, remembered the linen. On the ropes hung voluminous things that immediately attracted the attention of everyone. The views crossed. Silence around, only a deaf whisper. For a long time, no news from the Arya. The thoughts were anxious in the heads. Birds called each other over the tops of trees. Zion stepped through fresh grass, searched for Arya, and announced the hack that went in search of her. Sweat drops slipped on Zion's face, he scolded, and Zion looked into every bush, nervously scratching his nape and once again calling Arya. The drops drained from the hair of the Arya, and Zion stood under the rustle of green branches. The views met, and both of them suddenly broke out. Zion's heart was pounding. He was in a hurry to justify, and Arya hid his body with her hands, suddenly burst into shame and squeezed his fist firmly. Oral's fist of air and crashed into the face. He shouted, and frightened birds removed from the branches. Hackett, chewing a juicy fruit with monkeys, has grown. An unfamiliar sound broke peace. In the eyes of Arya trembled guilt. She whispered before Zion, and he, in a confusion, scratched the nape of the nape, also quietly asked for forgiveness. Haku smiled, and everyone saved the dish. The smoke from the campfire was circling in the air, and things had already dried up. Zion with Arya coped with their hassle. Heiki rushes with Slopes, correctly carrying the main character and Arya on his back. The beast shakes in the air, deftly says, "Behind this hill, the border post of Valentia. Is it worth adding the course?" Zion offers a pause, nods, looks at the hook. He breaks out of strength, breathing goes down, and friends are gently insisting on a break, and he eventually takes this pause. The fire dances, the boys stop and take the barbecue. Arya with a smile extends the juicy meat of the beast, and then quietly wants a delicious, inhaling the smoky aroma. Someone's words floated in memory, and the hero seemed to have felt. Through these harsh mountains stretched longer than it seemed. His feet are tired of the stone, the wind rustled in his ears. It was not easy to get food in the villages, and even on the road, monsters appeared every now and then. It was necessary to go through the danger with the sword. He then confesses that he hopes that the food is enough, and warns he will have to replenish the stocks before the kingdom. But Gook waves his paw, wipes the muzzle, and urges not to worry. The smile flashes on his face. Now all is well, stocks will be enough for another week. But Hawk was a little discorded. He was eating so that his stomach was stuck, and inside it was loud, like a thunder. Zion is awakened by the nape of the nape, suspecting that something is wrong with his hearing, and the bee is subtly complained of sadness, and Arya no longer restrains the explosion of laughter. The hero notes, the roar in the brick is too loud, and the girl is scattered with laughter. The beast is alert, with curiosity sniffs to the source of strange noise. Zion laughs. After such work they eat a lot. Not surprisingly, because evil lasts for hours. He asks the Arya to bring him food, and he promises to treat him with delicious meat like a true beast. Hap wants to go hunting together, and Zion with Arya is asked to stay, give them a chance to thank. They disappear quickly in the bushes, leaving the air full of riddles. The beast fades for a moment. The sadness rolls a wave. It would be better at least someone is left side by side. His voice is lost, and tears shine on the muzzle while he rolls with a ball under a tree. After lying in a soft grass with a butterfly on his nose, he boils, picks up, and, ignoring other people's words, still goes to the boys. A stranger scents the air. The butterfly takes off from the nose. Huck feels the stench of the monster and understands. He is already nearby, roars who sees the enemy, and causes Huck to appear boldly. With noise, an unknown beast breaks from the bushes. The white boar was powerfully brought, all tense muscles. Huck immediately guesses, there will be strength, and a little magic would not hurt. But Boar shakes his head. He does not want to fight, and the hawk asks as he asks where he came from here and how he learned to speak, and the beast whisper that he was once home, but was kicked out. The distrust of the heck heart. Why get rid of if he grew up as an accomplice? But the relief is slowly warm, at least alive. To ask science if the boar attacks while running at the same time? Carking. They are not enemies, sighs with a relief of the boar, receiving blessing and quietly thanking for this unexpected gift. In gratitude he shows the path, quietly says, there, hidden in the depths of the game and full stalks, from which in the eyes of the hook flares the impatient flames. Through the dust and mud, the hack finally finds a secret entrance to the dungeon, swallows the gloomy darkness of the first level, hear the sharp smell of the pine path to the right, so it moves to the left. He managed to take a few steps, as suddenly from the shadow with the bell cut into his body arrows and immediately break. Huck thought, these traps are hissing heat, so something delicious should be nearby. The second level of the hidden dungeon meets Hoka with solid darkness. The light does not break even to sharp eyes, and suddenly somewhere in the dark, someone's eyes emerge. Something tampingly grabs the body and sharply absorbed by the teeth. The guy exclaims that he will not become their food. The dance of the red fox flashes. The flames blink, the little creatures will squeak and instantly sink back. The pupils are expanding. These are goblins, their whole flock, and the beast is inadvertently thought, are these tricks really food that can be caught infinitely like a boar? Goblins' meat, bitter, nausea, even after frying. The smell does not disappear, only remains tasteless, and he thinks if he has lost his failed land. Only the paw touched a strange chest. Suddenly a malicious goblin jumped out with a glow and shouted so piercing that the echo ran into the darkness. Goblins jump out of other chests. They are preparing to rush into the beast. The hook fades for a moment, is surprised that a monster is hiding among the treasures, and still dreams of finding fragrant meat or juicy fruits. Further, at the fourth level, the hook is greeted by goblins. Their screams sound not as before. At the second level, no novelty. But the eighth again brings the screams of goblins, and the hook is already full of this throat. Anger burns inside. Anger is absorbed on Barovi, it seems. He deceived him. The crazy hook rushes out of the dungeon and, shouting that he has drained him to the den of some goblins, runs to the clearing, where the blue pad is sleeping, snot and planting. The beast is screaming that he was deceived, in the dungeon of no crumbs of food, and a sleepy boar is murmur, there is food. What is the feed there? The hook is surprised. Some goblins. And suddenly the sleepy creature opens your eyes. Vapor no longer understands why the hack does not like goblins so much, and angry hears in response. I do not believe that they are delicious, because with such a power you can catch a real beast. Boars admits that it does not taste the taste of either rabbit nor wolf, and the body shakes inadvertently from hoblin meat. Hack swallows. The thought of poisoning scares to the cold in his hands. The boar, as if fascinated, calls to try the goblins together, promises an unusual taste, and the beast rushes to the side, loudly baptizing from such a long. The hook turns to Zion and Arya, begs to listen to when they turn joyfully with the news about the fresh. But the predator suddenly sees the mountain and a few dead goblin behind their backs. The hook's exhaust scream breaks the silence. Suddenly it comes to him that not only he but also friends and boar are poisoned by goblin meat, and the horror squeezes his breasts. The hero denies. His hands are not here, it is the goblins themselves attacked and died. Arya with a smile adds, real meat, beef, a little further. The hawk rejoices, these people know the taste for life. Behind the back, the boar emerges. The sharp spirit of the goblins can be heard in the air. The hook breaks on the cry, throws everything and rushes away until Zion with Arya is puzzled, losing their guesses. The road calls, and the boys go on. The hack is mutilating that there should be a guard post of Valentia ahead, and with anxiety asks if it will be allowed abroad. He believes that if he is an improvised beast, there will be no problems, and he remembers the water hero and confidently thinks that everything will happen well. Huck suddenly understands Arya. He and the hero notice her strange silence. Between the singing of tires and the glitter of roads, the girl fell asleep, and the boys exchange smiles. She is so sweet in her dreams, even the breath became more gentle. The sudden cry cuts the evening silence. The man drives someone away. Arya grabs, raises his head and feels a sticky rustle. These are giant spiders. Looking at the crowd, the boys notice a girl among themselves and decide to save her. She is not like an experienced adventure search, HEC notices. And the hero silently gives everyone on a spider. The spider thread flies to the Arya with a whistle, but it as flexibly evades and exclaims that she knew about this trick. The sword from the ice flows in his hand. Let the enemy now try to prove his power. The icy sword whistles in the air and hit the monster just in the face. That's a decisive blow. The moan spider flies away and the last time makes a shrill sound. Black wings unfold. The body flies right above the enemy. Shots are shot in the air. Shells with a whistle break through the spider, covering his body with holes. The third spider is struck, and the question grows, the question. Why do these creatures fight to the end if they could escape? A little time has passed. The monsters lie down. Victory tastes like dust and sweat. The girl is cautious. Arya asks if she is injured. The stranger smiles gently and says she is fine with her. There is no wounds. Suddenly, a familiar water hero sounds in the song, and she rushes to clarify it. Here's confirmation, and the stranger adds, she saw it a few years ago in Valencia, and from there. Arya looks at the girl who is tortured by monsters and asks where her accompaniment, and hears, money is not enough. The fortune teller lives with one forecast and hope. Suddenly she grabs Arius, asks to go with her to the rotor around the mountain, and she is quietly recognizing. She has left her husband. Now he probably looks for her in the midst of night silence. Arya promises to draw a stranger to the village, but something squeezes in their breasts. They never delay themselves. Then the hero assures that he will protect her from her husband and proposes to return to Wallens, but she immediately refuses. She says quietly, it is better to travel in the mountains alone. Gok proposes just a step further. The hero sighs and does not insist, does not force the girl to what she does not want. The stranger rushes to the Ari, begs to stop. Do not leave a defenseless woman so simple, her voice trembles. Asks to stay nearby, not to throw herself. The hero goes to the border pledge. I am sure that if a man was looking for her, he had to cross the border. The girl asks whether Arya will remain nearby and Zajan nod gently. Will remain. After that, the zone and the hook were moved on the road. Zion of the Edge of the Eye asked that he was thinking about the divinery. Hawk glanced at the sky, slowly whispered, which almost did not believe her words. The taste of the cold is still in the chest, but the desire to go to the mountains again more fear. Maybe there is something else that pulls it on. Meanwhile, Huck suddenly hears the thud. People run to him, breathing heavy, like driven animals. Offers. Among these people, a man should be found. One of the crowd turns to the hero, asking whether a woman with the look of a sake, and Zion nod. Saw him, and adds, now his friend is looked after. They heard about the criminal organization and trade of the bodies. The faces of the hero is instantly shrinking. The questions take off sharply with anxiety in the eyes. The girl returns to Arya and proposes to hang for the future with her husband, and in response hears, he is not mine. The harbinger laughs, says, in love, he never mistakes in such things. The girl promises to predict Arya's fate, pulls out cards and proposes to choose two. This time Arya hesitates, but with a trembling hand reaches the deck. Arya pulls out the cards, and in the rustle of their lands of the breeze whispers, the first map opens the soul. Its settled darkness in it. Whether the lover turned away, whether he lost it forever. The girl felt that she guessed. Zion really lost the bride, and still wore it with a burden, but the fortune teller whispered, there is a key to his heart somewhere, and there is still hope for Arya. The second map, a girl with a jug, said a fortune teller. She wears transparent water for her beloved, sincere, devoted, and Arya smiles it mentally. Perhaps it is a sign that their souls are harmonious. The fortune teller squeezes her lips and says, nothing will happen. If the girl persuades the hero to go with her to the rotor, and then tell you if they fit each other. Ari's eyes flare up with admiration. She agrees immediately. But the fortune teller does not have time to prove. In the warmed air suddenly explodes, sharply breaking her words. The hack points to her, looking at the men behind, and asks in Arya whether everything is good. As suddenly the fortune teller whispers, who did not expect the deer so soon, and suddenly produces a weapon. The blade rests on the throat of Arya. The girl hears whispers. Do not move, indifferently, the hero you or not, from here not to escape. Arya barely whispered, what's going on? Men are suddenly shouting, witch, witch. The girl strictly orders to remain silent. If she goes with them, she will still be killed. And if they do not make a weapon, threatens the death of Arya. The hero feels like the air is angry and uses his black hand. Black tentacles firmly squeeze a fortune teller, barely breathing, no step. Zion orders to seem, time is responsible for crimes, and she understands. No way out, so it pale, losing dignity. In the end, men get the offender saying goodbye to everyone. The hero does not hide curiosity. How this woman has become the confidence of Arya so quickly, and Hawk also asks how she succeeded. The beast glances suspiciously and says that he heard. All her divination about love comes true, and why then her money? Arya is like a tone in numbness, and suddenly the hook catches. She said something good to him, but unexpectedly she smiles and agrees with Hoko. They say, a fortune teller, and somehow guessed her fate, and she laughs. Arya was still a girl, probably. She asked to divide her love. The hero suddenly became interested in, and asked the girl to tell more, but Arya smiled cunningly and whispered, the secrets did not live if they were renovated aloud, and then he would not come true. On the hill, the boys look at the clouds. The fog does not retreat, only thickened, and Arya quietly points out, in Valencia rains, a common thing. The hero nods and proposes to look for shelter, because at night it is a row again. The girl says quietly, there is a church and a hotel nearby. There you can spend the night. Proposes to stay here today. Zion nods, agreeing, and Gook smiles and gently supports this opinion. The hero advises to relax and move to the church in a moment. Promises to guard the peace of friends. Arya gratefully calls him a true gentleman and huddled closer to the hack, feeling comfortable. Barely eyes were stinged. Aya with Hoax are already huddling with each other under night rustling. The hero smiles, feeling warm and something funny in this moving picture. The hero notices his friends tired and smiles. The beast became almost a friend with the girl, and suddenly, feeling someone in the air behind his back, turns sharply. The stairs lead down. Anxiety is huddled in the darkness of the night. Not to feel the magic, and in the throat the predatory thirst is healed. Thoughts are bitterly buzzing, and suddenly someone chose it for the target of his and friends. Zion's gaze suddenly grabs familiar holes in the ground. Sharp alertness, the hand is already squeezing the sword, and in the soul still grows up hope that it is just a mistake. The giant worm emerges behind. The earth trembles, powder flies. He opens his mouth, and the hero immediately rotates, squeezes the weapon, and in the lightning of the movement, puts protection. The terrible monster beats, but it hurts only the earth. Zion has time to bounce and hides in the dark pit instantly. The hero sees how quickly the worm slides, and suddenly he notices something. In the swollen belly, the monster, hiding undigested prey, he looks. The size hints at a cow or pig, and horror hangs. What if it is a person? This time, Zion does not choose explosive magic. He listens to the deaf stuns underground, counts the strokes and, as soon as the monster escapes outside, cuts it on the body. Suddenly he fades. A worm breaks out of the ground, lifts a cloud of dust and, twisting, rushes to the sacrifice, wanting to devour it at once. At the same moment, the Zion breaks forward, creates the body of the monster in half. The pieces fall to the ground. Hot, dark blood is poured immediately. Looking at the thickest part of the carcass, the hero hopes to find a cow or pig there, and then carefully cut, feeling under his fingers the tite of the meat. Contrary to the hopes, a figure hidden in mucus is escaped from the body. Zion observes it, shudders. Something is not good here. But she notices. On her husband armor, he may live. The helmet falls from the head of the hero, under the fingers a warm breath, and the man does not come to mind. He says something, touches his face, and here, unexpectedly, the man grabs the air and screams with surprise. The smell of rot and silence of the monster's belly. Zion shares that the worm absorbed it, and then it was stuck in the stomach of the monster. Then he asks with anxiety whether the memory has not disappeared or still remembered. Shaking his head, the man confesses, I am not a hero, just walked the road to Welsh, made a halt, and suddenly the worm slipped out of the grass, rushed, and I trust the armor too much, and made a mistake in my strength. Hearing about the church on the border where the danger is hidden in every shade, her face changes in the moment. The voice trembles in the air. She asks again what she really is waiting for him. Zion said he would not ask for salvation, but only requires a response. Then he squeezes the air between his fingers and asks, would they really eat it if he lost? The man leans closer, quickly throws his gaze around, and is quietly sharing with the hero a secret. He can feel hidden doors and traps, but asks no one to share with anyone. He confesses that this church aroused his suspicion, so the wind of night curiosity led him to the closed door, where he stepped into a cold shadow, holding his breath. In a dark room under the church, a man came across a weapon and armor repositories, where some swords were still shining with fresh blood. And suddenly, a scary secret was opened before his eyes. The view of the hero becomes serious and alarming. He realizes that it is about the elven ear, and to hunt the elves is strictly forbidden. There were rumors. You say that if you take the elfay ear, you will receive the elixir of longevity. But it was only a war where the hunters chased after the elves, and between the elves were striking. The man confessed that the church became a shelter for questionable people. So he got out of there as soon as possible, and the hero felt, in everything the priest was involved, although he has a reputation of the gentle. But the interlocutor with suspicion agrees. By this point, Zion's friends turn to them. Huck is concerned about what happened, and Arya, sighing with relief, quietly confesses that she was very worried, and wants to know where he disappeared. In a girl, a man immediately recognizes the water heroine. The horror runs on his face. How so? She is near Zion? After a wave of fear, the man rushes to the head, whispering the hero not to tell anyone. Hack glanced at Zion in confusion and asks if he did not confuse them with some monster. He finally decides to reveal all his friends, and Hacker suspects that the priest is part of the gang. The hero agrees, because the gang can hide among anyone, even those who are trusted. Arya suggests that it can be people from an antisocial organization, somehow rumored came to her. Criminals are hiding in the church, so a mentor with soldiers was searched by a building. The girl explains quietly. They have never found anything. Believes. Everything is carefully hidden. The hero catches the thought. The church at the very land. Because of this, weapons are easy to slip the city. The gaze slides to the Arya. What will you do if the priest finds out of the gang? He asks. The voice is full of anxiety and tension. In the air there is a noticeable taste of fear. The girl's face became harsh. She lowered her chin and quit firmly. Then she will have to arrest. Suddenly a hack joins her. He promises to help, and the hero, nodding, agrees, because she is more for them than just a friend. Arya crossed her hands on her chest, thanked her friends, holding back emotions, and then turned her back, because her heart trembled from the fact that Zion again called her girlfriend. From the slope, among the smell of raw grass, the boys look at the hotel. The hero says that he will first go down himself and find out if there is a bed at night. Arya agrees, knowing that her face is too familiar. The owner may suspect something and will not let in. And the hack waves his hand carelessly. The night in the stable is not terrible. Having pulled a deep breath of hope from his chest, the hero turns to friends. Not everything is lost. You have to try to agree, and confidently knocks on the door, asking if someone is alive there. In the room, several people warmly welcome him. Zion looks at the elderly man and a woman nearby and feels it is a couple. And when she notices their children, understands here is a family business. The door creaked. Huck looks, smiles, and greets everyone. The man rejoices, they say. Today there are no guests. They are here as if they are relatives. So he asks guys not to go. The owner added, for hooks made from handy means, a place is only in the stable. The hero agrees and warns. Arya, his comrade, will remain near him. The girl waves her hand like a breeze in a summer park, and with a smile is represented by Arya Michelet. A man feels the cold runs on the skin and begins to mutter quietly, barely restraining surprise. The owner clarifies whether she came with supervision. The girl replies that she simply went on the road to the capital. He asks uncertainly whether he does not hurt, but the man is gently assured. No, they do not mind. The smell of smoke in the air, the surprise in the eyes of the owner. He met the Arya just like an armed guy, and anxiety is quietly resisting his thoughts. Suddenly, a man comes to the boys, looks carefully, and asks the owner whether the guests really appeared here. because unfamiliar voices are heard around, and immediately calls himself the rector of this church. The hero seems to be introduced to Hack and Arya, and the owner immediately notices the power of Zion's animal and welcomes the water hero with a broad gesture. He proposes to look into the church and spend the chapel. And in response to Zion with Arya, they are quietly thanked, from their voices to hear sincere joy and surprise. The owner tells about crowds of pilgrims looking for salvation here, and the hero slips sideways. A girl fell on his knees before the altar. Around, only a priest and sister. The owner, with faith in the fate, is gently asks the guys not to be ashamed. They say, if you need something, contact. He is ready to help. Though they are familiar for a long time. Arya feels true in him. Thick darkness hung from the outside. The fresh air is cold. Cried his friends to move to the hotel, he quickly turns to the side, heading to the stable. The hero whispers that the church is considering this night, and asks the monster to monitor the auras of the servants and the priest, just in case. Huck only nods and silently goes into the darkness, casting his eyes over his shoulder. The rain dribbles in the windows. The Zone takes the weapon in the case, silently informs the Arya of the start of the operation, imposes spells and warns. If it does not return in 3 minutes, let the girl be alert. She assures that he will come to the rescue, and hope is quietly settling in their hearts. A moment, the hero is near the church. The magical call leads him. Neither the priest nor the sister in the chapel. Roading to the room next to the chapel, Zion sees the rows of bookcases. In the air it smells of dust of old volumes, and he understands. A library, from it to the basement, should be a way when believing in data. She recalls that the third shelf should be a device. Pushes the book, finds it, presses the button, and the cabinet with the creaking begins to move slowly, opening the secret passage. Behind the stairs in the basement, memory throws the words of an armored fighter. Zion hopes that no trap has been hidden here. Going into the basement, the hero is wary of look. Around weapons, gear, magical things. Everything flicker in the darkness, smells of metal and dust. The space of the verse breathes danger. But here he goes away and the look changes sharply. Before Zion, the ghostly appears exactly those elves. He recalls that the kingdom of Valency elves has never been, so they were brought from afar, or maybe bought. In the quiet corner of the room, the hero notices a closed chest, which was not mentioned by neither the guy nor the armor. The opinion of the secret circulation of the forbidden ripens in the head should be verified immediately. Lying on the bed, Arya swings his feet, sighs tiredly. In the room quietly, loneliness will hang in the air. Boredom moves the shadow on the ceiling. In the head of Arya, the idea is swarmed. Zion is like immune to trouble, and she only has to wait. But when the evil comes, it will escape and save it without hesitation. Imagine. The hero notices her devotion, confesses to love, asks to become his wife. From the excitement of Arya sprout in the wind, and suddenly strange cries are bursting into the window. With an unexpected jerk, she jumps. Sharp screams ring in her ears. But with every instance, Arya notices. It is too thin voice, apparently. The mandragora is screaming. The mandrake stretches in the sun, as if ordinary grass. But it is worth it. The earth tears the root in the form of a person who saves wildly. This piercing cry can twist his head with pain, nausea, and sometimes stop the heart. The girl suddenly understands. A trap of the mandrakes worked, and she could be lucky to be inside the chest to hurt the one who was at risk of opening it. Realizing that even Zion was not omnipotent, Arya detained her breath for a moment, then asked to wait. Now her turn to go towards the fate. The door barely opened. The invisible blow walked on the body, and the girl shook the girl. She instinctively retreated, barely holding back her breath. The owner of the hotel, hiding the suspicion of a polite smile, asks Arya where she goes, calling her an honorary guest. And suddenly she notices the wretched wife of the owner nearby. The owner nods. He does not seek quarrel with the girl, but the order was simple. If it turns out, he must die. Arya slides his eyes on the face and notes a strange alien eye color. The true meaning of light magic illuminates her mind, and her husband just smiles. It was worth waiting for her. But he adds, in this dark even the hero will not stand two opponents. Such circumstances, he says, is perfect to kill the hero, and adds that they have their reasons. The girl immediately feels the smell of conspiracy in the air and asks whether they are from the same organization as the priest. The woman throws sharply, enough chat, now I will kill Arya. The man only nods, and both rush forward. In the air swells a fierce determination. Only the whistle of blades can be heard. The owner mockingly calls the girl the chain dog of the king and predicts her death. But she only casts her gaze on the icy sword and asks, "Prove who you are." At the same moment, a sword flashes in her hand. The cold shine of the blade shimmer in silence, and Arya seriously asks a man with a woman to allow her to move to Zion. The owner and his wife were slowly coming from different sides, and he said boldly, "Underestimate us. We are the former B-class adventurers. For us to defeat even the out, not that person." The wife says hoarse, "In this darkness, they killed many people." And here the husband rushes to a girl with a cry that now she will die. A heroine on a night's horror. Arya cleverly reflects the blow. The weapon rings in the air, and the woman only casts a look at the man and whispers about a special reception. He nods silently, getting ready for a new jerk. The girl apologizes, throws, "No time," and says the spell. The floor was covered with the owner and wife, they shouted, feeling mucus, and when the woman swung his weapon, Arya quickly stuck the knife. The woman falls, and in a moment she stands in front of her husband, quietly says that there will be little time, and in the air smells of tension. The girl asks where the light magician, considering he is probably a priest. The answers are not heard, and only when Arya notices that the children are sleeping sweetly, the owner whispers, "Although they are small, but at times stronger than parents, even the brightest beast is defenseless in a dream." Silent stables. Only the heavy breathing of the enemy and the smell of hay. The guy quietly turned to his sister, warning, "There is not a man, there is a monster. They would not lose vigilance." She laughs. She says that she hid their smell, asks her brother not to worry, and hints, if he is cut off his head, there will be no time for fear. In the stable he whispers, "As the swords will not help, we will resort to magic." Their swords fly to the body with a monster, and barely touching the rough skin of the hook, the blade with crunching into sparks and debris. The girl and the guy paled with surprise, in his heart, panic. But he suddenly remembers. The beast had to be white, and now the skin darkens, the body has grown. The sister nods, notices the same. The girl breaks on the cry that the guy only dreams of magic, and he smiles and throws lightning arrows. They are whimpering in the air, like a sharp thunder. The spell apparently was thinks the young man, and his sister asks if he is sure. And suddenly the beast breaks out the mouth and yawns wide, releasing a warm, moist breathing into the silence. The children wary and looked frightened, and then Hawk stood up suddenly and calmly reported. There was no dream in his eyes that night. The mention of the long-standing form breaks out of it. How much harm will this strange body stand now? Children screaming air, the baby falls, and the hook, hiding his voice in the shadow, tells that he should become a red fox. And his eyes are full of evil. "Shout to your sister, you have to run." She nods, and they rush together, and suddenly the tail of the monster with death guttings throws them into the air, and the bodies have to punch the wall. Shay explains, "It is unacceptable to disturb the guests in the middle of the night." But suddenly he is alerted by a strange movement behind the church wall, as if there was something rustling there in the dark. And here he understands. He is not alone. The presenter with his sister, coding, with surprise, they notice that the trap with Mandragora never worked. The girl casts a look at a cloud of dust, inhale the air, and suddenly exclaims, "The same Zion is approaching." The hero emerges from the clouds of dust, all in dark magic, and the owner confesses. He thought that the water hero would become a burden, but Zoyan skillfully escaped traps. He says everything was on the verge. If it were not darkness, trouble would not be avoided. And then he asks what the enemies are looking for, because the Valiant authorities are just and strong. The presenter calls for the war and the expansion of the borders, although the country has made peace with a hated Orista, and suddenly breaks. The cowardly king was frightened by the hero of darkness. The hero recognizes the fear of the king. The dark magic in his hands also threatens, so it is better to avoid a vain battle and offer a priest to give up. But he refuses to go to it under any conditions, recognizing Zion is powerful, but not invincible. In the meantime, the owner raises his hand. The dawn glow is sniffing from his fingers, and he calls himself a sorcerer of light. At the same moment, the defense disappears. The hero realizes that the priest is still a strong magician, if he was able to drive darkness. Suddenly it breaks into a cry. A dark magician is no longer frightened. The driver recalls, the magic of light is its weakness, the touch of spell is enough, and the forces will melt without hope for recovery. The owner is constantly attacking, and the hero feels the mana melts like water in the sand. Doubts squeeze the hero. Is the priest really so many mana? But suddenly, he notices his sister, who creates the magic and already feels she invisibly gives him his strength. Firewall spell suddenly flashes, and Ziana shows that his strength is not only a darkness, but also a flame that whispers hot in the air. Let the priest seize. He also has other art. The hero asks why he doubts. And suddenly his sister is bitterly throwing the owner that he will not last long, because he feels the flame grabs his skin with a heat from which it is difficult to breathe. The priest rushes to her and quickly understands there is no light magic. And suddenly Zion raises his hand, a shadow is thickened in the air. He decides to cause dark power. 3 black tentacles suddenly squeeze a girl and a boy. They shout, and the hero coldly admits the dark magician is the most terrible enemy. A light magician, and everything decides skill. The city bells call to the palace, and the king meets the heroine of water with a smile, remembering she came, not just so. She has an urgent case. The girl agrees, and also adds that she has evidence. The church on the very edge of the kingdom has become a refuge for an anti-social organization. It is felt even in the cold touch of stone walls. She adds that her comrades have seized 6 of this organization and asks the king to immediately send warriors there. It was flashing in his head. It was this temple that her teacher was suspected, and he was right. The hero puts a weapon on his palm, says, all of this was buried in the basement for months, and among the iron colds lay and forbidden things, even El Fiera with a weak, sweet smell. He asks to send the soldiers to the church immediately. The king's gratitude is still trembling, but his gaze slowly breaks. This is the first name. The hero already opens his mouth to name his name, and Arya intercepts a moment. With a smile announces, this is Lama Chokol and her friend Seal, having driven the truth about the former shadow hero. The king raises his eyebrows in surprise, hearing such an unusual name, and the girl immediately says that tomorrow will return with another request, and quickly leads the hero behind. The street rustles under the steps. Zion leans to the Arya and whispers that the name she chose is terrible. Arya sighs, recognizes. She does not know how to invent good names. Children one by one run up to Arya and ask to shake their hand, and in a moment a crowd, voices, laughter, baby palms stretch on all sides. Some ask for a baby, others stretch the girl flowers, someone else sincerely congratulates on his return to the capital. In the crowd, the joy is throbbing like a light breeze and laughter. One of the Demets suddenly asks Arya whether she is already with them, and the children, laughing, are in a lively questioning whether she travels only with the hero, hinting that he is her beloved. Arya denies. Zion simply saved her, no more, only a rescuer. Children are delighted to praise the hero, and adults, inspired, unanimously pick up this praise. Zion smiles softly, looks at the girl. A crowd is talking nearby, and the hero of the water is really a star, but she sighs. His knowledge is much larger than her. The path is drawn further. The hero throws. It is necessary to hurry. Probably the pursuit has long waited. Suddenly, Arya grabs the air because it is very close to the place. She splits the run. Zion asks if she should see the mentor to bring the hero's business to the end. The girl remembers how she had already met with a water heroine named Linarius. She was strange, like a shadow on blue waves. It is better not to ask her marriage, she throws. And Arya adds, Linaria, 29, up to 30 wants to have time. So the heart trembles from despair. He still begs the hero not to flirt, but he does not understand immediately. Through the scents of the evening dew, the boys approach a small house. Arya is lightly knocking, calling the teacher, and in the air swells. A few seconds of tense waiting, and silence squeezes the breasts. The anxiety is cut in thoughts. Teachers, apparently, is not at home, probably. Again, in the glass hides the fog. Arya laughed. As soon as the hops touches, she immediately forgets about the guests, begins to shout that if the teacher does not work, she will tell how the first love fled from her in 3 days. The doors of the house are screaming. The girl in the big witch hat squeezes out of the twilight and shouts the name of the hero's girl, calling her to herself. Arya carefully reminds that she asked not to mention on the case, but Arya replies, the threat appeared only because she did not go out, and asks to enter the house to talk. The teacher knows that the refusal will change nothing. Arya will still appear, and here her look suddenly slides to the hero, and she asks the student who is the pretty man. Suddenly, the liner approaches him, easily kisses in the cheek and rushes into the hero's arms. whispering that she found a future husband. But in a moment she is enveloped by an icy cold. Moving away from Zion, she notices Arius between them. The girl nods sharply and advises to be ashamed if life is even more expensive than poison in the veins. They come to the house. The fresh air is even the curtain. They sit down at a round table, and the Lysaria suddenly says that she understood what was missing, and surprised, the hero is the same axe, and Zion has repeatedly saved it, skilled and not forgotten. She confesses she did not believe that he would come down from the heroic path. Zion is quietly explaining, friends have betrayed, so now he goes life without looking back. Arya assures that he understands him and says, now he will follow him, choosing Aliona as a successor, but the teacher is strictly answered, it is impossible, and the girl flashes outrage like a hot spark. With the gnashing of the teeth, Lynaria explains that the girl escaped with the boy. More and more anger spills in his voice. In addition, she adds that Alona would not return. She was frank because she found the same, and confessed that she sought to kill her. Arya quietly squeezes this storm. No one has to die. The situation is still far from the ideal. The teacher will no longer become a heroic. She sighs, and in response, hears that the most important cases are now enough. Arya understands. It's time to look for the groom. The girl swears, I will go, and again become the heroine. Only lend Lynaria is the title for a short time. The teacher sighs, asks how many years to wait, jokes that he will be able to turn. Hearing this, Arya is almost losing hope. He is already preparing to run after Alien, but at this moment the Linearia is quietly called. There is only one request, and it will agree for him. The teacher asks to find Herb's potion. The hero's eyes are rounded by surprise, and Arya fades with a silent shadow, not believing heard. For a few seconds, the girl catches every word. In her chest the anxiety squeezes. She is still indifferent. The denial is spinning when the teacher suddenly asks to silence. She laughs. Arias will not understand her with such a gift, nodding toward her chest, and then Lynaria assures that if the boys bring this drink, the glory of the heroine will fall on her for a moment. But Arya asks to slow down. You do not imagine how difficult it is, Lynaria confesses, and remembers, so many times I was looking for a potion. Everything is in vain, and now the hero has appeared. It reveals Zion, the strongest of the axes of darkness. With it the cave of 10 paths will become a prey. But Lynaria added, if the boys refuse, the hero will become her husband, and Arya lowers her hands. There is no chance. Zion agrees to bring from the cave of potion. The teacher smiles and adds that the man does not definitely refuse, but her words sharply interrupts. He confidently states that he is not going to marry. The smell of apples in the air, the girl nods and explains. Arya will tell you in detail. After that, the boys go out of her home. The door sighs quietly behind them. The sounds of the steps are heard on the pavement, and Arya murmurs that her teacher is a real heroine. Strong, delicious, purity everywhere. But they say, not married, because the breasts are small. The hero confesses that he did not suffer from a potion that enlarges the breast, and the girl whispers quietly, in the west, in the cave, there is an old witch. Her store smells of sharp potions, on the shelves, mysterious bottles, and people whisper, one of them is really dangerous. Zion hears this and cannot get rid of doubts. Arya remembers a local legend. Once desperate, he was at risk of getting a potion from the witch, losing his hand on the way, and this story is on his mouth for a long time. He lives in every house. The hero is surprised. This potion is so desirable, does not understand his strength. Arya quietly warns that her words may seem selfish, and confesses. This time she wants to go alone. But in response, Zhang reminds that the girl helps him collect magical crystals, asks her not to hide strength and extends her hand in warm trust. And he says that she really needs her help. These words shake the girl from the place. She catches her breath, lost in her own thoughts, not knowing what to answer. In the corners of her mouth, a smile blossoms. The palm of the palm leans on the breast. The voice is trembling in gratitude, as if the sincere tune is pouring right from the heart. Together with the hero, Arya spreads in the sky. The wind weaves a strand in her hair, and in her heart swells. So they will quickly get the hook, even if the wings are borrowed. As a child, she dreamed of becoming a bird to feel true freedom. The lightness of the wind in the wings, not to know the obstacle. Zion nods and adds, sometimes you need to allow you to fly where you want. The hero says, the sky is also dangerous. flying, and suddenly a large bird grabs and swallows, and then Arya laughs, imagining how he becomes an unprecedented food for herself. She suddenly shows the road and says, "A cave from which 10 paths diverges." The hero thinks that he can come across the hook on the road, but smiles. A meeting is not needed. At first, Arya does not understand his words, but casting his gaze to the ground, notices the monster, which there are several armed men in the dust. The girl recognizes them. In front of her is a well-known group of adventurers, and casting a look, hurries the hero. He reacts rapidly and is already looking for words for refusal. While in front of the battle, the hook is cooked intensely, but the dust rises up. Friends have gone near. He screams to the beast as a friend and asks everyone to put up weapons. The wonder covers everyone. Zion has created such a mighty charming fox, and suddenly decides to stop, as if something invisible restraining a step forward. One of them returns to the hero, catches the alarm in his eyes and asks the beast that will be further, because it seems that the magic is not going to disappear. In response, he quit. Adventurers do not renounce their words, and he can break them into a piece. Then Zion asks what they said, and the beast tears the air. Friends were humiliated by the worst words. Arya is called, seems to be a hero of water, wonders whether these people are really so-called destructive, and he confesses that he does not know what happened between them, but still begs everyone to stop. One of the adventurers of adventures pleading asks to restrain the desire to kill their pet. Fear hangs over everyone, and the girl quietly asks the hook to calm down, though he does not know what was talking about. The beast, listening to her, quenches the rage, and travelers, not wanting quarrel with the hero, retreat and gather at the cave of 10 paths, preparing to clean it from darkness and dust. Arya says that their path leads there too, and the traveler, seeing the hero among them, quietly warns, "It will not be easy. People disagree by throwing guys on the move. We are counting on you." The hero goes to the slave, puts his hand on his shoulder and confesses that he has never seen this beast so angry, wondered, maybe they really said something serious. At first, there was a calm conversation between them, but suddenly the crowd rushed to Hoka, provoking and pushing. Zion immediately realized they were waiting for the moment to attack the beast and rejoiced that he had remained unharmed. Arya tells, in the capital about that group, there are legends masters of their craft. A-level. The names are buzzing like a thunder. A warrior Gijad, a meme peer, a smoking wax, and a cunning robber Chep. Above all, a Giad, a former mercenary, like a storm. In her childhood, she was told about him, a killer of thousands, who was buzzed with all after the war, and glory stretched behind him, like a shadow on a hot land. In the memory of Arya, the cave, where travelers went, and she asks the hero that next. He is calmly convinced. Plans are not needed, because the girl always has, and he has her trick. The beast grows low, agreeing. He will always follow Zion. The hero begs for the retreat, and explains the hacker, the mentor of Arya, the potion from the cave of 10 paths is absolutely needed. Hearing the details, the beast pulls the corners of the mouth and murmurs that the motives of the linearia are not clear to him. Probably, she wants a great desire and lush breasts, and the hero inhales with ease. A friend again familiar. Near the Tenwise cave, the air is tense. The poison squeezes his fists and throws. Again, the weak gathered today. Suddenly, Chap returns to him and asks what to do with the hero and his comrades. The warrior thought, this fox is really strong, because among all the defeated monsters HEC was the most terrible. The chap adds that Arya will also be a threat, the power of water and ice flow. Yadashir's friend noted that the girl was still young and advised not to worry about it, and the Wop looked with him and quietly asked about Zion. It felt that he was not as simple as it seems. Gita nods, acknowledging, the hero is also strong, as suddenly bloodthirsty bats appear in the air. The meme suddenly announces that it will destroy them, and whispering the spell, 1,000 lightning flies into the night. The bats fall on the ground one by one, and the jihad in delight. She is surprised to the girl again, especially admires her figure and asks if she wants to meet, but hears a polite refusal. She quietly says that Zion knows, and that he is the hero of the darkness. This unexpected truth penetrates the room. All covers deaf silence and distrust. The eyes expand, the hearts are pounding. Memes tells that from one land with Exom and saw it often. Even in the mask it is easy to recognize it. Gait and posture will not be deceived, and once met. Haida with anxiety says it is terrible, and adds, "A witch from the cave makes an agreement only once every 10 years. You miss a moment, you will wait for eternity with a bitter taste of anxiety." Hiad states that the elixir of longevity will have to fight, and Mim immediately rushes to Zion. She was constantly holding on to him, but now she wants to act herself, and the warrior at that moment hears the calm voice of Wax. He had an idea. They say, "You go further into the cave, you rest in the crossroads of 10 paths, one leads simply to the ski witch." Wax thinks, even sharing, the guy only gets confused and lands precious time. Gad advises to take care of the beast. He was created to overcome magical creatures, and Wax is well remembered. No attack of this creature has yet to act on him. Gaia returns to the Chappa, quietly promises to take care of the hero of the water. Let Arya later become stronger, and her weakness for Chappa is transparent. Girls are his element. He nods, confirming the words, and asks why not attack the 4 together. And the Hayat calmly explains, if they are delayed on each, they will lose the time required for cleaning. Before that, a friend adds, "It is not necessary to win the boys, it is enough to make them fleeing today." And then the Hapi understands a hint, quickly reminiscent that it has sharp and frightening traps even for girls. At the entrance to the cave, tension has hung. The boys realized, the adventurers are ready for battle, and the hero of the verse asks for friends to be careful, because no one knows what traps are hiding in the dark. Arya, straining, feels the cold attitude of this group to the enemies, and the hack throws bitterness. They were beaten as if they were hated with every breath. In a few steps there is a trace of battle. Scattered wings of bats, the smell of burned. The girl notices it and shows, and the hero nods. So really, it is the work of that resourceful company. About 10 crashes, Arya carefully reads the inscription on the plate. If you leave not yourself, the traps left by the seekers from Valencia will come to life and wait for anyone who is not going there. In the eyes of the hero, the question is shining. When did this sign appear here? The girl smiles gently, feeling a true interest in his voice, and asks to explain why he is so questioning. Humidity in the cave seems to breathe on the skin. Pays attention to the zone, but the wooden plate remains dry. The hook is frowning, he agrees. It is strange, probably. Someone wants to separate them in this way. 10 trails run in front of them, and the hero reminds, faster will be if everyone goes separately. Arya nodded, and the hook mentioned, to those who meet the witch, you should ask for a breastfeeding potion. Zion says that he will go to the left and remove the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th traces, and the girl picks up the 2nd, 5th, and 8th, while the hack takes on the 3rd, 6th, and 9th, and laughs, noticing that he has only 3 ways. The hero moves on the way, smiles at friends, and promises to meet soon. Arya asks to be careful, and the beast is murmuring about a delicious dinner after cleaning. The smell of fried meat is spinning in the head of Hoka, and here, a sharp whistle of arrows that break the darkness of the tunnel makes him forget about hunger instantly. Striving the monster, the boys suddenly fly back and stop it. The hook squeezes the jaws, realizing that it must be more careful, and looks slowly. Suddenly his gaze skeps a familiar silhouette. Wax. A tart smell remains in the air. He notes that the masking of the smell is over, so the beast was so decided to finally appear. Heck immediately guesses. Someone was hiding in the room, and then rushed to chase them when they were split. And yet Wax was called to meet the enemy, though he had recently quarreled with his friends. Huck feels the adventurer chose himself an enemy of the beast and was a coward. The insults of his friends will answer, the guy swears, and in his voice there is a threat. The beast growls that the words do not take away, and Wax is squeezing his fists. He is sure that no monster to him is a level, let the hack attack. Magic already swells in the air, but the cutting blow to the rushing rushes and lies an adventure seeker in dust. And the beast, grunting that he will not tolerate charming things from such a balakoon, throws him a hoarse, prohibitive order. Until the cold runs on the back of the hack. Do these people attack his friends in turn? Anxiety bites inside. What is there with Arya and Zion? The girl breaks into a cry, in her voice panic. A strange road creeping alive. Under the feet of snakes everywhere are buzzing insects, and everything becomes strange, alien, lazy. Before the eyes, a crowd of nasty skeletons emerges, and fear squeezes Arya so tight that she begs for a mercy. Trembling with horror feverishly, the monster is approaching, nasty and frozen, and the girl, squeezing a water gun in her hand, screams them not to approach, and shoots the skulls of skeletons on the ground. Only a crowning darkness, through which a girl has to pave her way. And in the thickest, the ink suddenly flashes someone's eyes. The frost runs on the back. Imagines who it is. Crazy goblins break out of the darkness, scream something scary about the girl. Sharp voices cut hearing. Arya understands. These are goblins, and the heart in the breast rushes, forcing her to run everywhere. Sudden pain hurts in the forehead. The cry erupts on its own, because something invisible stops movement and does not let on, as if the wall holds the breath. Suddenly, from behind the barrier, a chap emerges, a voice, similar to a rush of drops. He says that Arya is not lucky. She chose this one from 10 roads, and now she is a heroine of water for him. The girl feels that he appeared quite inappropriate. And with the glitter of the icy saber, the strokes are blown away. The cranked limbs of the goblins will pour around, and suddenly her heart squeezes anxiety that breathes hard. Suddenly he says that she has only one requirement. The girl should leave this gloomy dungeon, and not trusting the words, extends his palm, demanding a sign of a guarantee of Arya's ring. The indignation broke out in her eyes. It is enough to joke. But the chap just shrugged, they say, everything for her good. Because if he is not in a hurry, goblins will be devoured in a moment. In response, the girl causes the icy spears. The same spears sewed the bodies of goblins, tore the protection of chap, and a girl, with a cry that his tricks would not stop her, rushes forward and causes him a powerful blow. Suddenly it comes to her. So much mana has already spent this path, glanced gladly around, and then turns to the silhouette. Now your turn to help me. Cracking, and Giada's weapons are scattered in two. He flew into the air, and Meme, sitting on the floor, sprinkled with images, is surprised how quickly a friend was with nothing. The hero, in surprise looking, asks why adventurers so strive for witch infusions. Do they lack the strength? And Mima, feeling bitter, whispers, does he laugh? And does he remember her yet? She remembers a girl who once fought with a Killian Forest, and stops with a smile. He not to mention it because he has been fighting a monster with whom she fought for years. The girl did not hope that the hero recognized her, but he recalls and said, she skillfully possessed a spear as for her age. Mian shouts that it is a revenge for his father, whom the Zoyan took in her eyes. The hero quickly captures the essence of her words, asks for apology, and suddenly the girl explodes. She does not need apology. She will prove that it will become better at any cost. The breath of the rapid wind, the sudden cry. Magic fills Meme. The borders disappear, and the thirst for surpassing the hero breaks with every stroke of her heart. The fear of Zion. Magical tension grows in the girl, and death is already breathing in her back, but she just smiles, rushes forward and attacks the hero. The girl moves extremely quickly, her strength grows, but the magic pulsates on the veins. The body is about to break forever. Then the hero decides to resort to black. The forces disappear with every breath. The girl shakes down, rotates in the world of sleepy shadows, and unconsciously whispering barely audible words. Fatigue is clinging on the floor. Zion quietly explains, magic will withstand everything and man does not. So he filled the space with a black shell. She bows closer and extends her a bottle of potion. In his words, he hides care and anxiety. Mem looks in question what he conceived, and the hero of the verse says he regretted that he was able to take revenge on her father, while the girl obediently swallows the potion. Suddenly she asks her to take her in. The students admits, from the same moment she admires him, so if she cannot surpass, then at least learn at least part of his art. The hero apologizes and says, I do not take the students, but for you, I will make an exception. If you can surpass me, choose your way yourself. Before leaving the cave, Zion steps easily and says, when the meme finds something you want to protect, it will be more power than all this magic is taken together. The warmth of the palm is pressed against the cold doors. The memory flashes. Only a 10th path is special, and the heart whispers anxiously. Where does this unknown gate lead? A light jolt, and the door opens. In front of the preferential hall, wooden shelves are full of books. Colorful little things flicker between the furniture. The unknown surprise the hero. But the step is leading to the table where the girl greets, smiling. It has been 10 years since they have not seen. Zion looks back and asks if she is the same witch that lives here, and then clarifies, all those traps and monsters? Also her hands on the right? The witch quickly assures, it is not her, but the cave itself arranged everything, whispering through the darkness of old secrets, choosing her sacrifice without her will. The hero goes on the potion, but his gaze stops on the wet elves. He sharply, with a tender, asks where they came from here. The witch asks why the driver knows it, and he replies, it torments him, because among acquaintances, the elves, and every time, when faced with it, the heart burns anger. As soon as the girl raises the voice of indignation, as cold steel touches the forehead, the hero directs the sword, and the verse is put her hands on the table. Then he carefully asks where these ears from, and the witch, sighing, confesses, thanks to teleportation, he sometimes goes to the city. That's where he buys the ingredients for potion in one person. The name of this person, says the girl quietly, Wholesale, the owner of the largest workshop in the capital. Zion feels that it is a difficult figure, and she is wondering what he represents. The witch only mysteriously replies how the hero suddenly breaks the jars with the ingredients, the glass ringing, and the girl is crying. It is worth a madly expensive. The hero says coldly that he does not want to know the price, and states that he will not talk to someone who is lying. The witch, squeezing his lips, says that Wholesale belongs to the anti-social organization. Zion is sure. She has her own here, because she traded the forbidden elixir of longevity. But the girl asks her to believe her, and whispers how exactly it is to prove, where to step, what to say. First, the hero asks the witch to tell all about the antisocial organization and warns, no deals with them, and then, suddenly asks the elixir for breast enlargement, and the sorceress with a wicked smile agrees. Zion comes out of the dark cave. The verse tells the hack everything he knows, suspects that Wholesale himself moved to the Elfie village or sent someone. The thoughts of the hero were stuck in this last version. At the entrance, the gaze rests on the inscription, with animals and servants. The hack fades with despair, because the smell of animals is not tolerated here. But Zion is only indignant that it does not stink. All this is because I wash every day, jokes Hawk, and goes to the room where there is a gloomy guy near the door. Probably the owner of the store? Yes, it is. A stranger nods. Somewhere in the cave of 10 paths, says Zion, a terrible grandmother will rush. But the guy is just laughing, they say. They are scared in vain. The usual fable in the middle of the night. In the capital of life is raging. The store is full of interesting shop. And the king, a real miracle, says the hero, following the glitter in the eyes of the interlocutor. The seller, however, clarifies whether Zion has only come to talk, and asks to go unless there is a purchase. It is clear the witch told the truth, and the shopkeeper really reacts like an outbreak to similar hints. The hero announces he has several questions and will not touch the guy if he answers sincerely. Is your name Wholesale? He asks, not getting a single answer. And Zion, crossing his hands on his chest, gently throws into the air. Maybe he was wrong? The hero quietly adds. This was told him a witch from the cave. And the seller fades, his eyes expand, and in the air hangs his breath. Who are you, Zio? The former hero of the darkness of Zion Aksa steps forward, apologizing for the late appearance. And at the same moment, the boy's fists shrink, and with his clenched teeth a nerve scream breaks out. The hero asks whether the elves of the ears in the distant country only for the sake of the elixir of youth, and immediately throws the second question. Whose invisible eye is watching the organization from above? And here is the third question. Will the guy return to dark things? He catches the opinion as Zion did not sway himself, and recalls that X has been in this country earlier. Opto asks whether there is evidence before him a hero, and Zion sighs. The ring has been lost recently. It will not be easy to prove. The hero would not lose the ring, so the guy said, and then he got a mysterious object. His fingers confidently squeezed the thing that had to determine the truth was, or a deception. Opto states that this strange thing measures the enemy Manu and immediately reveals combat force. But as soon as the device was directed to the hero, the arrows of languages went up, and the researcher's gaze frozen in horror. The mana counter jumps over 350,000, and Wholesale smiles bitterly. This does not happen. Even the royal sorcerer did not reach 300,000. The hero squeezes the charming amulet in the palm of his hand, and through his teeth he asks the boy, or he knew, the elves despise people, because those previously attacked him. There was still a bitter memory in the air. After all, he slowly began to trust humanity. But now he only watches the desire pushes people to cripple elves, and breaks a magical object with words that he is not forgiven. The guy promises to tell Zion everything, but only on one condition. If others know, he will be killed, because he only took his father's place in the organization. After his father's death, he confesses. Traded with a witch from the cave of 10 paths. put his hands in a mournful gesture, asking for her indulgence. Zion explains that if the city leaves the city, the hero Arya will become his shield, and is interested in the answer. The young man recalls acquaintance with the water owner and quietly confesses. This thought surprisingly gives peace. Hands are quietly crossing on the table. Opto proposes to start with the elves, and then quietly shares that they are now attacked, and in the air seems to be anxiety. He adds that hunters chat not only on the elfine ears for the potion, but also on a mysterious magical mascot, and suddenly recalls, the elves become a forbidden product here. The anger rose in the chest of the hero. The elves are not weak, and it is obvious. Focused, through the tied teeth, he asks, how does your organization cope with such? Hearing this, the bulk announced, among the elves was a traitor who cooperates with a dark organization. The horror has frozen in Zion's gaze, and he once again asks the interlocutor. In addition, the guy says, we have a patron who called the chain of the tag. He says that men are killed, their eyes and ears are pulled out, and women turn into a forbidden product, and wholesale only size. Then he does not know what is happening to them. The hero extends his hand forward, hides the thoughts of the tag, and confidently decides. The true goal of this antisocial organization is to overthrow power, and quickly checks it from the operator. In response, he sighs. In 5 days the city floods with fanfares. In honor of the prince's birthday. This is what everything was launched. But suddenly the hero quietly reports something stunning. Zion reported that the shelter in the church had been attacked, and this news, like cold rain, knocked down the guy from the Panthelic. He froze, processing the incomprehensible truth. Suddenly, the optic comes. Before him stand the hero with his friends. He asks whether they are, and receives a confirmation. The attempt on the prince was cancelled because of this act. Handing his head with his hands, the guy confesses. He did not hear about the cancellation, and I would be glad to stop everything. And who knows what damage the shop is suffering. It smells of tension when Zion asks not to tell anyone about him in this conversation. He decides to help wholesale, and then calmly rotates and goes to the exit in a direct step. But in response, he asks not to tell anyone. If the organization learns about betrayal, his family will not leave a chance. Everything can end bloody. For a moment, the hero stops, cold in his chest. He is too naive, does not even understand what is right and what is not, tiredly goes away, and silence leads the story to the house of Arya teacher. The smell of dust and the Homer. Finally, Zion appears, apologizing for late, and a friend is already smiling, rejoicing that he has come. The teacher shines with joy, suddenly rushes to the hero, hugs and shouts that she believed in him and knew he will overcome everything. She squeezed her breasts and boldly put them in front of the hero, asking to evaluate. And the teacher, noticing the obvious influence of the potion, cast a reproaching look, and took her eyes at the same time, while Arya was burning behind. The girl points to the table, abundantly filled with a treat, and with a glitter in his eyes promises to the boys, today you can eat well, and Wildever winks. From the appearance of dishes, the hero immediately flowed saliva, such a temptation in dreams. The monster does not believe that all these delicacies are made by hand, and Zion invites you to start the meal immediately. Hack is eagerly crunching, shouting through the laughter. What a delicious food. The hero nods to him, he really gorgeous. And the teacher, smiling, confesses, she learned to become a wonderful wife. Smiles, cooks better than beating, but still lonely, and it is surprising. Arya sighs tired, the noise of the cup on the table says, for the woman the main thing is not to complain, but to live easily. The girl suddenly remembers the promise of the teacher, the look is more serious, asks heroism. And, laughing through the excitement, still agrees to become a hero of water at least for a moment. Arya breaks into the cry of joy, rushes into the arms of the teacher, whispers, how much he loves it. The teacher gets up, smiles and promises, he will become a heroine with big breasts and will find a worthy boy. Finally, a smile returns to Arya. Happiness is barely palpable in her eyes, although anxiety is still difficult in her breasts from the thought of a forced marriage. The hero, immersed in himself, has frozen on the street, where the hum of the city melts somewhere nearby, and the thought sounds clear. The future is woven from small elections, and it is time to reject doubts and act. A heart suddenly shrinks in the hostile. He understands. It is a matter of the tag and their dangerous organization. They should be stopped. Friends run up, whisper frightened. The teacher got drunk and fell asleep right here. The bronze sun slides between the branches when Sione shares. He has to go to the elven village, and friends, without hesitation, agree to go together and ask, "What pulls it there?" Arya thought. And suddenly tomorrow will not go? True already, the heart is anxiously squeezing the thought of Zion. There is no time to wait, throws the hero. Moves to the village immediately, and Arya whispers, "Stay here, don't follow me." The girl rushes to deny. He asks her voice to take her, and Zion calmly answers. He has her reasons, and asks her to just listen. 5 days later, when the prince celebrates his birthday, the anti-social organization will try to kill him. This is what the guy wholesale said, and the hero pleasantly asks the Arya to become a shield for him. The Zion realized, "I want to return as soon as possible," but something does not happen, so the rest adds only thought. Let the girl stay nearby so it will be safer. In the eyes of Ari, an interesting spark played when she asked if the hero trusts her. And in response, she felt his calm, sincere, "Of course, I trust." The girl in whose eyes the confidence flashes, promises not to betray confidence and whispers quietly that everything will be good. Let the kingdom leave her and a mentor. Zion sits on the hack, nodding that he will soon come back. The beast has been racing for a while, hostile. He filled the line of energy of the linearia and can now run at least in the morning. The hero thanked him and added, he must hurry. Having tensed to the edge, it accelerates even more, lifts a cloud of dust, and suddenly the story brings us to the southwest of the Galan Princess, to the Forest of the Lost, which is also called. High among the branches, where they stood similar to each other, the elf is called to relatives. I am convinced that there is no elves among the thieves. A person is definitely guilty. The oldest elf believes that the abductor is just pretending to be. And these words, like a cold breath in their ears, are anxious in the hearts of others. The girl suddenly returns to the old man and hints. He probably already has suspicions. He sighs and says, "The enemy can hide under the Lanali's face yesterday, and the conversation of her breath sounded alien, not in the right." Quiet whispers are spreading. No one believes that Lanalu has already been replaced, because she has been so few years. The anxiety squeezes the palm, and the eldest suddenly turns to the Kuna, remembering their friendship. The girl nods, confirms this, and he asks to take care of her girlfriend, knowing how difficult she will be. In her eyes, anxiety and determination trembles. At first, she quietly agrees, but immediately changes in the face and promises to do it. Kuna emphasizes that if the enemy is Linusing, it is necessary to urgently remove the truth about the girl's location. The senior looks with a warm smile, sees her confidence, but quietly asks not to burn. In response, Kuni shouts that he is overtaken by the enemy even through pain, but the older again repeats his. The girl lifts the bow, squeezes his free hand into his fist, and, seriously proclaiming that he goes, quickly moves forward, elastically flying from the branch to the branch, barely rustle the leaves under her feet. She barely steps on another branch, jumps on the right, a fun mucus, a joyful, as if the sun after the rain, and squirts on the leaves, greeting it. The cry comes to the Kuna. She immediately notices him, apologizes for the delay, gently calling him Thin Puni, and he smiles quietly and replies that everything was okay, and it was easy to wait. Having taken Puning with her, she calls him to the Ladal. If he agrees, he says to the blind jump on his back, and Nine immediately captures the hint of the merger and obediently fulfills the request. The girl and Mucus are intertwined as a whole, the bodies are throbbing together, and it is at this moment that Punin is flying on the head of Kunis, touching her wet paws. The thoughts that Lanali became fake, she drives away, but inside knows that the elder's eyes are not deceived. In their eyes, a quiet anxiety swells. It is not the time to rest, decides Kuna. How suddenly Punini rotates and asks verse. Is Lanali? The girl looks back, notices that the girlfriend is looking for, and quickly hides in the shade nearby. Listening closely to the silence, Kuna agrees with the assumptions of Punini, and suddenly notices. Lanal's disappear like a ghost, and the Kuna only has time to click. Then she snapped and warned Punini. They are already following. Lanolin erupts forward, surprisingly fast as the wind in the field. Kuna runs behind her, but the forces are missing. Anxiety grows. How if there was no soul in the village? Suddenly everything swims in the head. Or maybe a girlfriend and a truly self escaping, as the old woman said. And shuddering, Kun is running into the shadow, hiding behind a rough trunk and fading. The girl understands. Lanali has already left the village, and, breathing the alarming air, casts her gaze on strangers who have accumulated where she came from. Suddenly, one of the gloomy asks the alley clan about one Elfian. At the same moment, the girl returns to the Kuna and whispers here, hidden behind the tree, shows him a thin finger, and her words melt in silence. The body of the Kuna was stuck. Did the Lanal be lured her? But suddenly Lanali turns to her in his name and calls to go out. The girl is lost, the heart is shaking with anxiety and confusion.